Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. Welcome to the program here, live Saturday episode of the show. And, of course, you can bring up absolutely anything that you want to discuss. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Joining you in the studio, it's Ian.
People's Mountaineer.
And this guy with a beard, what's his name? Oh, the Reverend Captain Kickass. That's right.
Indeed. And Beard Talk Live, of course, coming up a little bit later. We can talk about that as the show goes on here tonight.
Got a new logo.
Yeah, that's right. Very exciting. It looks nice, by the way.
That's all right.
So we're going to get into whatever's on your mind. In fact, we're going to the phones first, where Dave Ridley is on the line to start things out from RidleyReport.com.
Ridley.
Yeah, I understand you guys are talking about Ukraine tonight. And I just wanted to, Milo Vangelis, the Yugoslav dissident, once said, I mean, it's not an exact quote, but it's something to the effect of, don't trust headlines, trust history. And I wanted to bring up a historical precedent that people keep forgetting. They haven't been paying much attention, but the Ukraine war is a lot like the Sino-Vietnamese War in a lot of ways, which occurred in the early 70s, where Deng Xiaoping invaded Vietnam for somewhat similar reasons to why Russia invaded Ukraine. And he was concerned about what he considered excessive foreign influence in Vietnam. He was angry at the Russians for being too involved in Vietnam.
Okay.
And the Vietnamese, and I'm sorry, it wasn't the late 70s. It wasn't the early 70s, it was the late 70s. But the Vietnamese, it was kind of similar to the Ukraine invasion. The Vietnamese army performed very well, humiliated the Chinese on the battlefield. But eventually, the Chinese numbers began to tell, and the Chinese ultimately achieved their strategic objectives. I don't think they annexed much in the way of territory, but they were able to succeed, and they were able to kind of reduce Russian influence in Vietnam. And that's the kind of solution, or that kind of outcome, has lots of precedence in the world, and it wouldn't be the worst thing if that is the type of outcome that happens in Ukraine.
Okay, when you're saying that might happen in Ukraine, can you put it in today's terms, what that would mean?
Oh, it would probably mean Russia achieves some strategic objectives, such as keeping Ukraine out of NATO, but it doesn't really get much in the way of territory.
Well, now you know that Russia or the Ukrainian territories of the eastern side, the Donbass and the sections below that, just voted last weekend on a 5-day referendum to join Russia. So, I mean, Russia is claiming those territories as part of Russia at this point. In fact, Putin this week signed some official paperwork saying that they are officially bringing them in. Now, it still has to go through the whatever Russian legislature is, and I think it has to get some sort of a stamp by a court. I've got a story from RT about the steps that need to be taken, but essentially, as of right now, Russia is moving towards considering those areas their territory.
Like Ukraine is ours.
Yeah, so I mean, you don't think they're going to be able to make that claim, that they're going to be able to stick it out?
Well, that's the difference between these two wars, is that the Sino-Vietnamese war was shorter. It wasn't precisely territorial. The Russians are overplaying their hand, but can they actually hold these territories? Because, I mean, don't trust headlines, trust history. If you look at what happened in Croatia in 1991 and 1995, Serbia took over all this territory, but they couldn't hold it because they overplayed their hand. They declared independence. They had all the Kanin, Krajina, Serbs supposedly had their own thing, but Croatia eventually reconquered it, and it would not surprise me if the Ukrainians actually reconquer this stuff, and of course that could lead to the Ukrainians overplaying their hand. So the solution is it's to do what worked well historically, where the Sino-Vietnamese War came to an end because they had an agreement and both sides got something. The Russo-Finnish War in 1940 came to an end when the Finnish army put up a very good resistance, but eventually provided some strategic concessions to Russia. You just have to provide something.
Well, right now, the president of Ukraine is being reported that he is refusing to speak with Putin. Putin apparently is saying, let's return to negotiations. Let's talk. Let's, iron this thing out. Let these people go, and we'll call this a day. I'm sure that's what he would say were there to be negotiations, because supposedly this is where this conflict is supposed to end. These people want to join Russia, ostensibly, if you believe the poll that was done, or the referendum. And the guy from Ukraine is saying he's not willing to speak to Putin. He'll talk to the next Russian president, apparently, he says, but not Putin.
I won't talk to this clown, but I'll talk to the other clown.
So this guy in Ukraine is not interested in any kind of negotiations, with the exception of negotiating more billions of dollars from the U.S. taxpayers and probably the European Union, because I believe they just cut him another $12 billion check this week from the U.S.
Sickening.
Well, and that tells you where the command of whether or not you get to talk to Putin is really coming from. I mean, the people who have a handle on his collar are obviously America. That's where his money's coming from, and they do not want peace between Ukraine and Russia.
Peace with Putin means he's not getting billions of dollars from the U.S., right, to give to all his buddies.
Yeah, U.S. wants to continue the war against Russia without getting nuked, preferably. So the only way to do that is to keep the war going in Ukraine.
And so what do you guys think? Is NATO going to accept Ukraine? They just made the, speedy application this week. I think it was yesterday or the day before. They signed the paperwork. And in order to get in, they have to get the agreement of all 30 NATO nations. That's a tall order.
I don't think it'll happen, and I really hope it doesn't happen.
Me too.
I think Turkey, at least, is going to stand in the way of that, because they've already said that they were going to.
Okay, good.
And if it does enter NATO, I mean, that will likely be the beginning of World War III.
Yeah, that's the real concern here.
It's the chess of statism. Like, I so don't care. Like, the rulers are going to do what the rulers are going to do, whether we want them to do it or not. We have no say. We have no way to prevent them from doing one or the other thing. Whatever is going to happen is going to happen. I won't say it's predetermined, but it might as well be, because, well, none of us have any say in it. None of the Ukrainian people really have any say in it. None of the Russian people really have any say in it. So the only people that have any say in this thing are the tyrants,
the top thugs.
Yeah, I'd like to point two things out, though. Number one, we could have avoided all of this if we had just let Russia into NATO in the first place, because they had attempted to join NATO, which I thought was hilarious.
The North American Tyranny Association,
right? Which, they basically banded together to stop the USSR. So when Russia's like, "Hey, can I join?" I thought that was hilarious and wonderful. And if they just let them join instead of basically acting as if the USSR had never fallen, then we wouldn't be in this circumstance.
Ridley, any other thoughts?
Well, there's this natural length to which these wars are supposed to go on for a certain period of time. They have a natural end, but something like the United States spending all these billions prolongs it unnaturally. And every day that it goes on, we're closer to all dying.
True. Thank you, Ridley, for the call. That's Dave Ridley from RidleyReport.com.
And just as evidence that the government of the United States of America doesn't give two craps about anybody who they consider citizens, inflation's at an all-time high, right? There's a housing crisis going on. Well, okay, 40-year high. There's a housing crisis going on. Housing prices are through the roof right now. People can barely feed themselves. But, yeah, let's send billions to some foreign country for what?
Politics.
Yeah.
Because they can get away with it. And I'd also like to point out that when they want to, they actually know how to treat people, because you'll notice that you have to have unanimous consent in order to join NATO. And that's how any reasonable way of running an association would be, like a unanimous consent of every new member.
It
would be voluntary association among sovereign beings.
Is NATO like a homeowners association for for countries, for the tyrants of governments?
If you want to join the show, you can hear your thoughts on this developing situation. The number 603-283-6160. Whether or not Ukraine is allowed into NATO is certainly a big question right now, but also what is going to transpire with these areas of Ukraine that are ostensibly voting to leave and join Russia. That's really also something else that's going to shake out.
I won't be happy until Ukraine is a rental place for cranes.
There's more coming up. You can join us here on Free Talk Live's Saturday show.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Free Talk Live.
They believe, I think, that government can be good as long as you just elect the right people, which, of course, is nonsense. Government can never be good because it's an agency of coercive force. It doesn't matter who's running it. It doesn't matter what the goals of the organization are. As long as it's funded through coercion, as long as it's funded through threats of violence, then nothing it can do is ever moral or justified. They understand the system and they want to work inside it to change it. So, therefore, in order to have their hunger strike that they'd planned, which I thought was a great idea, they went to the government, and what they do?
Ask for a permit?
They asked for a permit. They asked for a permit. It was already over at that point, right? Whenever you ask permission from the government, you might as well expect them to say
no.
No.
You know what? It sounds like government has this non-cooperation thing down to a science.
Yeah, right?
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, and you can join the show here, the live Saturday episode. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Ukraine, their government thugs have applied for NATO membership, and they have to be approved by 30 other sets of government thugs. So maybe that part isn't going to happen.
When government regulates government, what do you get? Crap, that's what you get.
Ultimately, what that would change would be that if they did join NATO, then NATO could join the fight directly in Ukraine, as I understand it. Now they have to play this proxy war
does
thing.
NATO have like a separate army from?
I believe they do.
Is it separate from like the UN? I remember the blue hats from back in the day.
I think it is, but I'm not 100% on that.
Yeah,
That's
I'm pretty sure this would foment nuclear war, even if they weren't at war in Ukraine right now.
Wait, could NATO like fight the UN? Could like there be a war between NATO forces and UN forces? Because that would be obscene, right? Like meta government agencies fighting each other. That would be obscene.
Sure would.
Not that government isn't obscene by itself, but
and I feel sorry for the people that would be in the midst of it, because I'm sure you've heard about some of the horrors that UN troops have visited upon just the average people that are in any given area. Just absolutely horrifying.
They wear those
rapes.
light blue hats because light blue is supposed to signify peace.
So if you want to join the show here, you can. By the way, I do want to say thank you to Scott Hughes, who is a Free Talk Live Gold supporter of our AMPS program. Scott joined over at amps.freetalklive.com. That is our Patreon, where he's gold, so he's doing $10 a month. Thank you, Scott, for that. We ask for 5, he's doing 10, so going above and beyond, and it's appreciated because it helps us advertise, market, promote, and support, which is what AMPS stands for, Free Talk Live. So if you like what we do here and you want to continue to support us to continue this mission, you can do that, and you can get some cool perks as well, like access to the recorded commercial-free full radio show archives and podcast over at our Patreon, which it's an RSS feed, so it's very nice. Nice feature over at amps.freetalklive.com. I want to go...
Beam me up, Scotty.
Continuing here, Jet is on the line in Tennessee. Go ahead, Jet.
Yeah, hi. I got a couple of points of trivia and then talk about the protesting. You know, this Ukrainian thing, of course, NATO is not going to accept them at this point. That would be insanity. But I wanted to point out that China is like half the size of the United States, but it has twice the number of people. And now Russia has twice the landmass of the United States and half the number of people of the United States. So I was thinking, why doesn't anyone, Russia was saying how they wanted to rescue their Russian people from the Ukrainians, from all that good stuff. Well, I was thinking, why not just invite those people who call themselves Russians into Russia, since there's so much room? Anyway, it just shows how stupid borders are and all that kind of thing.
Well, and isn't it, I keep stumbling upon this in the United States of America, there's like more than enough land for every person within the geographic area known as the United States to have, 20 acres or something like that. Like you could actually fit all of the people into, a state the size of Montana. Yeah.
Well, to answer the question of why, you would have to get inside the head of Putin and his various.
Well, I can tell you one reason why. So the unique geography of Russia and Ukraine makes that really the only way to easily invade Russia is through Ukraine, either through the year-round warm water port, or just through, like I said, geographically, the way that the mountains and everything are structured. You pretty much have to go through there in order to get to Moscow. So
that shows that it's a land grab. That's all it is.
Yeah,
just a land grab and trying to make trouble from a crazy person. But I wanted to mention something about the protests that are happening. Like
Iran,
Russian. Iran and the Russian guys that are bailing out. They're going, I'm not going to fight this. And the concerts that are going over there, they're saying, F the war and all this kind of thing. Well, to me, it's kind of exciting because my whole deal is to help people understand that these monsters, these overlords, are just other people, and I think that's coming about. I was hoping it would have been at the turn of the century, with the internet and all, but it's finally coming to where people are saying, these people have no right to tell us what to do or to demand that we go put on a uniform and all this kind of stuff. So we'll see where that goes. But and then my last thing is, a couple weeks ago, I called in and I give my 7-second elevator speech, the one where I say that people with titles are just other people who have no more right to do anything than you or I. Well, the guys that were talking at that time were saying it's too long. And I'm going, help me understand how I can make that shorter. People with titles are just other people who have no more right to do anything than you or I may not do.
Seems pretty succinct to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember if I was on that show or not, but what you say is factually correct, and I agree with you. And
yeah,
I don't know if there was like some attempt to sort of like further sloganize that.
Well, the bottom line is that is what's going to change the world toward freedom. Is when people in general, say to themselves, these other monkeys who used to be my neighbor, who now have some kind of special title in an office, they don't get to do what they do because they're just another person. Used to be somebody's son or uncle or, like I said, neighbor. So it's insanity for anyone to think of another person as being somehow greater because they have a title.
Thank you, Jet, for the call tonight. Appreciate hearing from you. The number is 603-283-6160. I share his vision. I really hope that someday mankind will come to the realization that the state or governments are just as bad of an idea as old chattel slavery was.
And
we moved past that.
It's such a horrible idea. Like, if somebody came to you today and said, hey, guys, let's put together an organization that claims a monopoly on violence in a geographic area and tells everybody else sort of what to do and how to live their lives, and we'll make you pay for it. Doesn't that sound like a great idea? Like, if somebody proposed this idea, put together like a PowerPoint presentation for like, hey, this is what we want, everybody who has any common sense at all would be like, this sounds dumb. This is a horrible idea. But for whatever reason, people that exist now are like, well, that's what was here when I was born, and so we should just accept it, and that's what we have to live with, I guess.
Well, most people would rather have a predictable amount of violent crime than an unpredictable, even if it's lower amount of violent crime. And the government certainly tends to provide a predictable amount of violent crime. Every year you will be stolen
using violence
from
against you?
Yes, exactly. Every year you will be stolen from on April 15th. It's very orderly. Every time that you drive, there is a probability that you will be shaken down for money by these so-called officers.
The road pirates.
Highwaymen.
And ultimately, government is just a group of violent thugs. But they are a predictable set.
Yes, but they have badges and uniforms and fancy hats and identification
Well, that's how you can tell
that you have to fill out.
Predictable amount of violence that you have already agreed to with your social contract.
The number here is 603-283-6160. If you want to join the show, you can share your thoughts here on the live Saturday edition of Free Talk Live. Phones open at 603-283-6160. This is Free Talk Live.
I've been told no in many different ways.
I give you an order and you're going to obey it.
George, you can go this way. You can't do that and you have to leave here.
You cannot bring signs into the rally.
Walk with me. Well, I'm comfortable here, actually. Whoa. Hey. Who do you think you are? Excuse me.
There is no video and audio allowed in this office.
No, I have work today.
You ain't going to make it.
Wait a minute. Hey! Oh my God! Unbelievable! Why are you running from me? Because you're scared me. What am I being detained for?
You're being served.
What is this?
You're being served.
What is this? Bureaucrats have a funny way of telling people no.
That's the sound of the men working on the chain.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks.
The United States is never going to recognize this. And quite frankly, the world's not going to recognize it either.
President Biden speaking at the White House hours after Russian President Vladimir Putin annexed 4 parts of Ukraine and declared them part of Russian territory. In a furious speech that decried the West, the Russian leader insisted that this week's referenda were legitimate. President Biden again dismissed them as a sham. And with senior figures in Vladimir Putin's entourage again making nuclear threats, the US president hit back.
America is fully prepared with our NATO allies to defend every single inch of NATO territory. Mr. Putin, don't misunderstand what I'm saying.
The US announced more sanctions against Russia today. With that part of the story, FSN's US correspondent Tony Waterman.
The new economic sanctions are sweeping. targeting hundreds of Russian officials, including the country's central bank governor, Elvira Nabiullina. Sanctions on top Kremlin officials were extended to include their wives and adult children. Several shell companies outside of Russia also made the blacklist. The U.S. believes they were created to evade previous rounds of sanctions on Russian military suppliers.
Ukrainian officials say 30 people were killed today in a Russian strike on a convoy of vehicles near the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. Another 88 were injured. President Zelensky today vowed to push all Russian forces out of his country. In other news, after a week of market turmoil that saw sterling plummet to record lows, Prime Minister Liz Truss and Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng have met with Britain's independent spending watchdog. The Prime Minister and the Chancellor sat down with the Office for Budget Responsibility, which is expected to publish details of their mini-budget next week. Inflation in the Eurozone hit 10% in September, a new record replacing the previous all-time high of 9.1% last month. From FSN's Brussels bureau, Rosie Burchard with more.
Friday's figures mark the first time Eurozone inflation has reached double digits. Energy prices have risen more than 40% year on year, according to the European Union Statistics Agency. The news piles more pressure on the European Central Bank, the institution dedicated to keeping prices stable across the Eurozone. The ECB has hiked interest rates twice since July, and more rate rises are foreseen. While inflation is high across the EU, there's major divergence between countries. In France, it stands at 6.2%. Meanwhile, Estonia is facing inflation of 24.2%.
Calls are growing on FIFA, soccer's governing body, to ban Iran from taking part in the World Cup. The move comes as protests in Iran grow over the death in custody of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini, following her arrest for failing to wear her hijab correctly. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. Phones are open, and you can join the show here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And things are not looking too bright when it comes to the economy. However, there is a potential solution, which is to get your money out of the government system and put it into something that has real value.
Such as?
That they can't easily just take away by printing more money out, which is
perhaps like
inflation, like gold and silver that you can get from bullionmax.com. That's what some savvy investors have been doing for a very long time, because historically, precious metals like gold and silver do a pretty good job at keeping up with inflation. Obviously, there's no guarantee for future results, but they got a long history behind them, so odds are that's going to continue. You can get direct from bullionmax.com without talking to a salesperson, and they will ship your precious metals fully insured directly to your home. And now you can get the gold back through bullionmax.com/FTL. You can, and goldbacks, if you've never heard of them,
that's awesome,
are
right?
Beautiful, interchangeable gold money that you can carry in your wallet. It's made of real gold. They're very popular. They're accepted at freedom-loving businesses. You're not going to be able to spend these at Walmart, but you're going to be able to spend these perhaps at your local mom-and-pop store once you introduce them to it. They're pretty brand new to the scene, so go and learn more. Go to bullionmax.com/FTL. You can grab some goldbacks there. The Wyomings just came out.
They did. They're great, too. They're beautiful.
Utah, Nevada, New Hampshire were the states that came before Wyoming. Those are the only 4 states available. So check them out at bullionmax.com/FTL. Now, look, if you're looking to just stack gold, you don't want to get the gold backs for that. Gold backs are for using, for spending. If you want to stack gold, there's plenty of ounces and other sizes of gold and silver over at bullionmax.com. They can help you out with that too. And that's where you get the lowest price per ounce. But then you can't really use it for anything. So for stacking, you want to go with the ounce stuff or whatever size you prefer. And for spending, you want to use the gold back. So check out Bullion Max.
Unless you're going to dollar cost average into gold and just be like, I'll get a little bit at a time.
Well, that's always a good idea, too.
What was the website?
It's bullionmax.com/FTL.
I'm curious because one of the things that I really enjoy about one of these websites out of the before even the aughts, really, or at least around the aughts, that is credited with destroying newspapers, Craigslist.
Mm-hmm.
they have, when you go and browse whatever for sale, they have a little box on the left-hand side that says cryptocurrency.
They do now, yeah. That's right.
They've had that for years now.
Yeah.
And I've used it.
I love it.
I've used it. I love it. And I'll sort things by only that. Like,
that's cool.
Hey, let me see what I can buy for crypto today.
That's a cool idea.
Right?
Yeah.
And you could buy boats. You could buy, like, if you expand your search to like whatever your zip code is and go like 500 miles or whatever, you can find all of the things in like, most of the country that are for sale for crypto. But it would be really interesting if Craigslist also added a checkbox for buy with gold or buy with silver. That would be also very cool.
Maybe as time goes on, there will be enough demand for that as the dollar really starts to tank. But let's go to your phone calls and thoughts here. John is on the line in Delaware. John, go ahead.
Yeah, I was hearing recently, I don't know the airline, but there's been some flights that somebody's been able to hack into mid-flight. And they get over the intercom and they hack porno sound effects.
Oh my!
I heard it wasn't. Yeah, man. And I heard it wasn't just for a little bit of time. These people can't figure out how to shut the damn thing off.
Damn.
This is like a 2-hour flight nonstop, man. Imagine being on that flight with the kids.
Oh my God!
I'm sorry, I had nothing to do with that at all. It wasn't me.
Dude, imagine that. And there was one recently, they were doing ghost and ghoul sounds, I guess, for Halloween coming up. But they can't figure out how to shut this off. And I was wondering if they can get in and hack the computer system to do that, could they control the jet possibly?
Well, no, I don't think so. I mean,
and also, it's probably like a 12-year-old kid on a laptop or a tablet who's hacked into the sound system.
So wait, how many times does this happen that you know of?
I've heard of 2 occasions. The first one I initially heard was the whole entire flight, like a 2.5-hour flight. It was porno sounds, and the most recent one I actually heard the sound effects. They were playing them on the radio. It was like a ghost, a ghoul sound, So
it sounds to me like maybe somebody figured out how to do this and they put it out there on the internet because
the airline doesn't want to admit that it was hacked. That's the thing.
Is it the same airline, by the way? Is it the same brand of airline in both instances?
Yeah, it's the same airline that keeps
Which airline is it?
I can't remember, to be honest with you, and I don't want to say if I don't really remember.
Sure.
I think
So you're saying the airline doesn't want to admit that they got hacked, but okay, if the porno sounds are coming over your intercom, you've got 2 options. Like either you admit that you got hacked, or you say we were trying to do this.
Mm-hmm. It'd be even funnier if it was like one of the flight attendants that did it.
Oh, you know what? I also heard, guys, the flight attendants aren't even initially hired to serve food and drinks. The real initial reason for hiring them is for that safety deal they do before the flight. They show you how to put on your mask and all that. They're actually hired as safety people, if you want to believe that.
Well, I don't know if that's true, but it's an interesting rumor. Thank you, John, for the call tonight. I appreciate hearing from you. The number's 603-283-6160. So
that's what they call that, the safety dance.
I've heard of it,
The buckle. And I mean, like, there's a song from the 80s called The Safety Dance that has nothing to do with the dance the airline people do. But
that's what they want you to think.
Okay.
All right, so back to the story here with regards to potential World War III, the different areas of Ukraine on the eastern side. The Donbass, so-called republics, whether you want to agree with that or not, is obviously up to you. And then two other territories.
I have a vernacular question, or is it a? I'm not sure. So, World War I was WWI,
yes,
as in the Roman numeral one,
right?
And then World War II was also WWII, but in some instances written as WW2.
Yeah.
The numeral 2, not II. And so if it's World War III, is it going to be WWIII or is it going to be WW the numeral 3?
I guess it would depend on how much room you needed in the title of a news story.
And if anyone's around to write it.
So in like a Twitter tweet, because you're limited to characters.
You're probably going to see WW3 more often there.
Okay, but in like a blog post, it's going to be WWIII.
Perhaps. Okay. Hopefully we don't ever get to find out, Captain, but that is definitely seems to be where Both sides are barreling towards it as quickly as they can, it seems. Now, you've got the different areas voting to not declare independence from Russia or from Ukraine, but to actually leave Ukraine and join Russia. And the next step here, according to RT.com, is that the treaties, which have now been apparently endorsed by apparently Putin and the presidents of the various different areas of these of Ukraine, they are now going to be submitted to Russia's constitutional court, which will assess them to ensure they don't violate Russian law. Then the agreements will have to be ratified by the State Duma, which is the lower house of Russian parliament, and then by the Federal Council,
Duma.
its upper house. Lawmakers
Derma.
will also need to pass legislation on incorporating the two republics and two regions into Russia. The Donbass republics, as well as the other two areas, Kherson and Zaporizhzhia, will become part of Russia no sooner than the law is signed by Putin. Now, what they don't give you here is an estimate of how long all of this political bureaucracy is going to take. I don't know if it's going to be 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years. I have no idea.
I don't know the population of Ukraine. Let's just, for round numbers, let's just say it's 10 million.
Okay.
I don't know what it is. Now, let's say 8 million people in the Ukraine vote to join Russia.
It was only the eastern areas that did this.
Whatever it is.
Okay.
The people who did not vote to join Russia should be allowed to not join Russia.
Yeah, that would be an ideal world.
But that's not going to happen because in democracy, whenever a majority of people votes for something, it forces the remainder of people into whatever shape the democracy voted for.
Well, there's nothing quite as democratic as gang rape.
So apparently the lower house of Duma could convene as soon as October 3rd, that's Monday, to discuss potential treaty ratification. So this is moving, it sounds like. Your thoughts are welcome here if you want to join us. This is Free Talk Live. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeen.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeen.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, and you can join the show here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Ian Peakless Mountaineer and Captain Kickass here in the studio. Free Talk Live brought to you by Bitcoin.com. If you are ready to start learning about cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, get over to Bitcoin.com and click Get Started. Right there at the top of the page, you'll find some introductory information there, which you should spend a little bit of time with. If all you got's 5 minutes, that's okay. The first video, I think, is 3 and change. So you can watch that and absorb some new information, get some new ideas about the idea of money and cutting out the governments and the banks, the big bankers from the picture of money. Cut out the middleman. It's always a good plan. So go to Bitcoin.com, click Get Started. You can also get the latest news headlines there anytime over at news.bitcoin.com, and there's many other features, including the ability to actually purchase Bitcoin and other cryptos.
And it is a really good time to start putting a little bit away at a time, because we are, by all appearances, relatively close to the bottom of this cycle.
I hope you're right about that. Right now, Bitcoin is at about 19,300 and change per unit. But remember, you don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin. You can get 1% or less if you want to. So it's up to you what level you get into it. Don't spend what you can't afford to lose, obviously. And do your research first. Just click Bitcoin.com, click Get Started. Just wanted to share a little bit more here about what's been going on with Russia and Ukraine. There was a speech by Vladimir Putin recently.
A politician made a speech.
Yep, there was one. Normally I don't really care, Captain, if a politician makes a speech, but this particular one is in the process of potentially moving the world towards a very large conflict.
I.
And so it's always interesting to see what the other side is saying. The Western media is always going to show you what Joe Biden and the Western media, the Western states have to say about it. They're never going to really give you an honest picture of what the other side's. And so, like, for instance, when the conflict with George Bush and Osama bin Laden was happening, it was very instructive to read Osama bin Laden's actual words, what he actually had to say. Because, again, maybe if the media is going to give you anything, they'll give you a little bit of out of context, from here or there.
They're certainly neither fair nor unbiased.
No, definitely not. Now, to be clear, I am not going to read the full speech. It would take forever because he's a politician. You know how they are, right?
They bloviate.
They talk a lot. However, there is a gentleman who is a professional translator of Russian. His name is Konstantin Kisin, Kisin. He's on Twitter. He also has one of these Substack accounts, Konstantin Kisin, with a K, Konstantin. And he's reproduced. What he did was he took the full speech of Putin and he summarized it. So he did us a favor of trying, because I listened to one of Putin's speeches a couple of weeks ago, and it was a half an hour long. And so this is going to be a little more.
That man can talk for a long time.
Yeah, and to be fair, the guy has some interesting things to say, especially when it comes to Western hegemony.
Well, I've always found that it's a really effective tactic to let them speak about their enemies if you want the dirt on whichever country.
Yeah, they give it to you straight usually.
Yeah, usually they will have legitimate concerns that they will voice effectively.
He won't tell the truth about Russia.
Oh, of course
but
not.
He'll give you the truth about the American foreign policy.
Exactly.
So Konstantin points out, he says he wishes everyone in the West would listen to Putin's speech, but since that won't happen, he says, let me summarize as a professional translator for 10 years. He states, as he's done from the outset, what his intentions and complaints are in the plainest terms possible. Setting aside his brief comments on the recent referendums, and he puts that in quotes, he spends most of his speech discussing the West. His primary complaint isn't NATO expansion, which gets only a cursory mention. He says the West is greedy and seeks to enslave and colonize other nations like Russia. The West uses the power of finance and technology to enforce its will on other nations, to collect what he calls the hegemon's tax. To this end, the West destabilizes countries, creates terrorist enclaves, and most of all seeks to deprive other countries of sovereignty. He says it is this avarice and desire to preserve its power that is the reason for the hybrid war that the collective West is waging on Russia. They want us to be a colony, he says. They don't want us to be free. And of course, we know Russia's not free.
No.
We know it is, arguably one of the least free countries.
I mean, so far, I got to say, spot on. And also, you are describing Russia.
They want Russians to be a mob of soulless slaves, is what Putin says. And that's apparently a direct quote. The rules-based order the West goes on about is nonsense. Who made these rules? Who agreed to them? Russia is an ancient country and civilization and will not play by these rigged rules. The West has no moral authority to challenge the referendums because it has violated the borders of other countries. So just to focus on that for a moment. You've got these referendums that happened over several days in the eastern areas of Ukraine. And, of course, before they even happened, they were being called a sham.
Right.
It wasn't, let's send the UN election minders in there and have them certify that they're actually doing the election in a voluntary manner and that no one's being coerced.
I don't need to know any facts about this to tell you what's really happening with it.
Yeah, they didn't want to verify whether the election was being done legitimately. They just basically wiped it away and said, nope, we're not going to acknowledge this.
So there's nothing legitimate about elections, really, when it comes to governments. All elections are illegitimate because all you're doing is forcing the minority of people to the will of the majority.
Well, unfortunately, that is democracy, and it sucks. We don't like it here, but in reality, we haven't moved past that as a people, Captain.
Well, so here's my thought with this. So far, they've done this before. They've done polls. They've done these sort of things before, and you cannot get these regions to say that they would rather be part of Ukraine than part of Russia. Now, obviously, ideally, it would be a thing where the individual gets to choose which country they are or are not a part of.
Oh,
that
wow.
would be, but I mean, people aren't ready for that.
Nope.
I'm aware of that. So the next best thing, I think, would be that the individual would get to choose which country they are a part of, since we're not willing to accept the idea of an individual not being part of a country.
I'm sorry, some people actually are ready for that. Just not a lot of them.
A very small
That's
number,
true.
unfortunately.
That's true.
And for whatever reason, those people are not allowed to go down that path because the rest of the people aren't ready for it, which is completely unfair and results in all sorts of horrible things.
Well, if they went down that path, it might work.
Well, right. If they allowed people to go down that path and then those people actually made it work and were able to show other people how well it works and that it does indeed work. All these people
would feel silly.
Well, here's one thing. As far as people not being ready for it, that is a good point, and it's true, and hopefully we're going to change that over time. But if, or rather when, New Hampshire's people vote to secede peacefully from the United States, I don't see how that is imposing anything on the people who still want to be part of the United States, because if you want to send a check to the IRS, even though you don't live in the U.S., you can do that. In fact, the IRS expects you to.
Well,
if you leave the United States and you go live in Honduras or something like that, the IRS still expects you to send them a check. So it's like, that's not going to change that for them.
No, I can see how that's still imposing something on them, because like if you have, your, ancestral house or what have you, like you want to live in your house.
You can still live there and follow all the United States rules if you want to. You can pay all the taxes that you want to the United States.
Well, that's the thing, though. They don't want to be part of this government because of what they give the government. They want to be a part of this government because of what they get from the government.
Or what they think they get from the government.
Right.
Well,
so, the U.S. military won't be protecting you or whatever.
Both what they actually get and what they think they get. So one of the things that they actually get is a passport that lets them travel to most countries in the world.
Oh, I can't wait to have like a New Hampshire passport. That'd be great.
Well, and once that's done, who knows which countries will and will not accept.
But even with that, like just the fact that you need to have a passport is
sucks.
And of itself BS.
It is.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like it shouldn't be required.
And it wasn't before World War II.
Right. Human beings should be allowed to just, hey, if I want to wander the earth like Kane from Kung Fu, as long as I'm not hurting anybody or taking anybody's property, why would anybody have a problem with that? If I'm nice and I go and travel to other cultures and other lands and I want to spend several years doing this, why should, or maybe my entire life, maybe that's just how I choose to live, is I'm a nomad who goes from place to place being really nice to other people and making my own way and providing value as I go.
Well, there's three things that people have a problem with that. Number one, you are being unpredictable.
Oh my gosh.
And they can't stand that. Number two, you are showing other people that you can be unpredictable and survive. And they can't stand that. And number three, you might make money in the process of feeding yourself and they don't get to tax you, and that no one will stand for.
We're going to continue here with some more of Putin's comments, or what is a summary of his comments here by a professional Russian translator. The number is 603-283-6160, but I will link to the full speech for those that do want to see the actual official speech from the Kremlin, direct from their website. More coming up here. This is Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next, after the news, here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks.
The United States is never going to recognize this. And quite frankly, the world's not going to recognize it either.
President Biden speaking at the White House hours after Russian President Vladimir Putin annexed 4 parts of Ukraine and declared them part of Russian territory. In a furious speech that decried the West, the Russian leader insisted that this week's referenda were legitimate. President Biden again dismissed them as a sham. And with senior figures in Vladimir Putin's entourage again making nuclear threats, the US president hit back.
America is fully prepared with our NATO allies to defend every single inch of NATO territory. Mr. Putin, don't misunderstand what I'm saying.
The US announced more sanctions against Russia today. With that part of the story, FSN's US correspondent Tony Waterman.
The new economic sanctions are sweeping, targeting hundreds of Russian officials, including the country's central bank governor, Elvira Nabiullina. Sanctions on top Kremlin officials were extended to include their wives and adult children. Several shell companies outside of Russia also made the blacklist. The U.S. believes they were created to evade previous rounds of sanctions on Russian military suppliers.
Ukrainian officials say 30 people were killed today in a Russian strike on a convoy of vehicles near the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. Another 88 were injured. President Zelensky today vowed to push all Russian forces out of his country. In other news, after a week of market turmoil that saw sterling plummet to record lows, Prime Minister Liz Truss and Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng have met with Britain's independent spending watchdog. The Prime Minister and the Chancellor sat down with the Office for Budget Responsibility, which is expected to publish details of their mini-budget next week. Inflation in the Eurozone hit 10% in September, a new record replacing the previous all-time high of 9.1% last month. From FSN's Brussels bureau, Rosie Burchard with more.
Friday's figures mark the first time Eurozone inflation has reached double digits. Energy prices have risen more than 40% year on year, according to the European Union Statistics Agency. The news piles more pressure on the European Central Bank, the institution dedicated to keeping prices stable across the Eurozone. The ECB has hiked interest rates twice since July, and more rate rises are foreseen. While inflation is high across the EU, there's major divergence between countries. In France, it stands at 6.2%. Meanwhile, Estonia is facing inflation of 24.2%.
Calls are growing on FIFA, soccer's governing body, to ban Iran from taking part in the World Cup. The move comes as protests in Iran grow over the death in custody of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini, following her arrest for failing to wear her hijab correctly. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. At the end of another unprecedented week of unrest in Iran, a look at the situation through the eyes of a prominent Western campaigner seeking change in his family's home country.
This has been going on for years, and I think the death of Mahsa Amini has been a real powder keg moment.
Omid Jalili is a British actor and comedian born to Iranian parents, and he's been outspoken, welcoming the protests that have roiled Iran since the morality police arrested and then killed 22-year-old Mahsa Amini, detained for failing to wear her hijab correctly.
They're not being put off. They're still in the streets in the thousands. Something huge is changing. Like when we had the George Floyd moment, of course, a policeman went to prison for the first time in 150 years. Here it seems to be sparking total societal change. The men are standing with the women. They're standing against the morality police who can just go up to people and do whatever they want, and people are too scared. So now they are now shouting. They're literally facing the captors, and they're quoting a poetess from 1852 who was killed, called Tahira. When she was killed, and her last words were, "You can kill me, but you won't stop the emancipation of women." And women in 2022 are quoting that back.
President Raisi ended the week calling the unrest unacceptable, but it seems certain that more of it lies ahead. The main news again, President Biden, in remarks directed personally at Vladimir Putin, has again pledged to defend every inch of NATO territory against Russian attack. The Russian leader today annexed 4 parts of Ukrainian territory. Inflation in the Eurozone hit 10% in September, a new record replacing August's all-time high of 9.1%, and calls are growing on FIFA, soccer's governing body, to ban Iran from taking part in the World Cup. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
I'm Brooke Alvarez, and while I may not acknowledge your presence in person, and if you try to approach me, you'll most certainly be hit in the face with the stinging nettles I carry on me at all times, I like to take a moment every now and again to answer your questions so that you can get to know the real me. Here's a tweet from @Kirkamunga saying, what is the most important thing to remember when talking to people who may not be as informed as you? I love this question, Kirkamunga. There are 3 simple steps to dealing with uninformed people. First, when you realize that someone doesn't know something, repeat very loudly in their face the thing they don't know. For example, you don't know who the Prime Minister of Zimbabwe is? Second, look to everyone around you and let them know that this person is completely ignorant. Hey everyone, Sebastian doesn't know who the Prime Minister of Zimbabwe is. Third, you call up the Prime Minister of Zimbabwe and tell him that Sebastian doesn't know who he is, and then laugh really loudly until the ignorant person just leaves in utter shame. If you'd like to ask me a question, just tweet it to my handle @BrookeAlvarez or post it to my Facebook wall.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
Hey, it's Free Talk Live, and you can join the show if you want. Phone lines are open. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here tonight.
Operators are standing by.
Indeed, it's Ian.
Beakless Mountaineer.
And the Reverend Captain Kickass.
And we are the operators. We don't have any other staff here.
Okay,
so
fine. You can choose to blow up the illusion.
Yeah.
Like whenever I'm in the first chair, I was talking about like our producers, and like it's generally whoever else might be in the room,
sitting in the chair and watching the show. Yeah. So we can take your calls about anything. We're going to go to those phone calls to start things out here, and then we'll get back into a translation of Vladimir Putin's recent speech after he signed, or I guess this was given as he was signing the.
You mean he doesn't give it in English?
No, he doesn't. Was giving the speech during the time when he was signing the papers to bring in the eastern portion of Ukraine into Russia after they voted at a referendum for over the last weekend. Let's go first, though, to Gigi in South Carolina. Gigi, you're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
Good evening, everybody.
Hey.
First of all, a shout-out to my fellow South Carolinians. I hope everyone is safe and that their property is intact. We got lucky with this hurricane.
Oh, yeah. Was it, a Category 1 or less?
It was a Category 1. It was a lot of rain, crazy wind, but 99.99% of our people are safe, and that's a good thing, as Martha Stewart would say. Number 2, I truly believe, this is my personal opinion, that what my governor of my state of South Carolina is currently doing is violating the United States and state constitutions. Several days in a row, he has been hosting press conferences. And every time a press conference takes place, he has a preacher invoke something from the book of Isaiah for a prayer prior to the press conference.
Are these conferences about the impending hurricane?
And post-hurricane. So it is very, very disconcerting to me as a resident.
Well, here's what you do. You should give a call to the Satanic...
We have Muslims, Baha'is, Catholics, Seventh-day Adventists.
Here's what you do, Gigi.
Christians.
And as an attorney, I think you would probably be aware of this. If they are using their government speech time to promote one religion or another, I want to finish the statement because you may already know, Gigi, but people listening might not know. If they're using their government propaganda to promote a particular religion, they do have to allow other people to have that particular time. So all you have to do is have some group, whether it be the Satanic Temple loves bringing lawsuits, so I would reach out to them personally. They do this. This is the thing that they do.
Makes great headlines,
They
too.
say, hey, if you're going to let the Christians in, you got to let the Satanists in, and they sue over it.
And lastly, in regard to what you and Richie Rich have been discussing, Putin annexing territory. I personally feel the United States is not interested in permitting Ukraine to become a member of NATO, because if they do, that would rock the boat with Russia, and all-out war could possibly break out, and it is more accommodating for the United States to simply keep funding and sending money and armaments and weaponry and technology and God only knows advisors, in quotes.
It certainly will keep, an anti-war movement from arising in any significant way in the United States.
Maybe not. We don't know. And lastly, I say, please, gentlemen, take notice. The recently elected Prime Minister of Italy. You can put her in the same category as the Prime Minister of Hungary, Poland, Russia, and former Trump.
Well, yeah, but like most people would frown upon us criticizing a female politician.
Well, I am, and I'm a woman, and I'm okay with that because it's dangerous, populism and fascism.
Well,
Be
any
very
government is
careful.
dangerous. I mean, whoever it was that she was running against was probably also a scumbag. He just might have been a socialist scumbag as opposed to a fascist scumbag. Thank you, Gigi, for the call tonight. I do appreciate it. By the way, that Italian minister person that she's talking about, or the president, or whatever the hell.
Prime Minister.
Yeah, this person is also backing Ukraine. So, there's no difference.
Or as I like to call her, the sub-prime minister.
Well, I want to know why she was conflating populism and fascism. I mean, those two don't necessarily have anything to do with each other.
One can lead to the other.
What is populism? Just what's popular? What gets you elected?
Well,
say anything that'll get you elected?
So populism is in contrast with elitism. So the two ideas being, on the one hand, that the people should run the country, and the other that elites should run the country. Like people who are really good at what they do should be the ones making all the decisions, or the idea that individuals should make the decisions for the country.
Here's a question that I thought of because of what Gigi was saying. Who gave human beings permission to own planet Earth?
God.
No, they didn't. That's not true. Show me evidence.
Well, it's the law of the jungle. I mean, might makes right. And so we can't be topped, for the most part, by other species. So by de facto...
That's fine, being, existing on planet Earth, right? If you want to, if your species happens to sort of dominate the rest of the species, that's fine. But where did this idea of ownership of the entire planet come from?
Well, are you asking where the idea of property and ownership came from?
No.
No, the idea that humans own the planet Earth.
Right.
And that's most cosmologies, in particular, the ones that are really effective to us, is Genesis, specifically states to, go out and conquer nature.
So the Bible?
Yes.
That's a poor place to originate that from.
Well, and for that matter, most creation stories tend to, at some point, put the world in the hand of people.
I say this because, in contrast to sort of the Judeo-Christian, philosophy that comes out of the Bible, the Native Americans and many other sort of native tribes of, ancient native people believed that no one owns the earth, that the earth is a living being that you must respect, and if anything, it owns you, which I kind of find to be more truthful, right? In certain ways, the earth seems to own people. People don't really own the earth. They like to say they own the earth, and they like to go draw lines on maps and be like, we own this part. And
I get what you're saying from this sort of philosophical, woo-woo, be one with the earth kind of thing. I get that. Yeah. But at the same time, I think most libertarians would agree that the idea of property has benefited mankind.
Well, hold on. So you're conflating two very different things here, though. So I actually see a really good merit to what he's pointing out. So the nature of proper property, if you will, where we have developed the idea of property rights to at this point in time is the idea that when you mix your labor with nature, that is when you gain ownership of that thing.
Okay. Right.
And if it's good, then good, and if it's bad, well, you got to fix it.
Native American example: some guy takes a tree branch, strings some piece of a buffalo, some hamstring from an ankle or a leg or something on it, and makes a bow and arrow, he has created property that he now owns.
Right.
Sure.
Whereas the idea that you own nature before you mix your labor with it is extremely dangerous and destructive.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely see what you're saying there. But, given the idea of property, isn't it possible that people could mix their labor with all the property and therefore own the whole planet?
With all nature? No, absolutely not.
No, there's not enough people?
No, it's...
you don't think?
There will never be enough people. And frankly, nature has a way of reclaiming things. I mean...
Well, if it's not being utilized, then they will grow over.
And there's a distinct difference between governments claiming they own a certain geographic area and individuals owning enough private property.
Is that what you were
themselves.
referring to when you were talking about the owning the planet?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
I wasn't clear about that. I thought you were just talking about ownership in general.
Yeah.
Governments tend to say, well, humanity owns the planet. We'll carve that up for you.
There's 200 governments approximately on the planet, and all of the planet is claimed to be owned by those 200 governments.
Right. The number is 603-283-6160 if you want to comment on property or the ownership of the planet. You can join us as well here on Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Are you dipping into savings to pay the bills? I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. Many Americans did squirrel away that relief money Uncle Sam sent during the pandemic while we weren't spending on this and that as we quarantined. Still, hitting the piggy bank for day-to-day expenses is scary and fundamentally unsustainable. Notable exception? Your credit card balance. It's double-digit debt, and your bank is paying, 1% interest on your savings? Slay that plastic and pay cash for what you need by making smart trade-offs about what you want. Example, Yahoo Sports estimates it costs $253 for a family of 4 to go to a Major League Baseball game, unless they go after an early dinner at home. How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks at andYouCanQuoteMe.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, and you can join the show here. You can bring up whatever you want.
Join us.
Is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We are about 3 weeks away from an event coming up in Prague. October 21st through the 23rd, our very own Mark Edge is going to be speaking at a conference thrown by the Free Cities Foundation.
He's not just going to stand there and look like Mark?
Probably that too, but he will be there speaking about something. I forget what. Something about, going to Honduras or whatever, one of these ZA projects. So if you're interested in the idea of special economic zones and these autonomous cities and intentional communities that are springing up around the world offering opportunities for settlers to live freer lives, you're definitely going to want to check this event out. It is almost too late to get the early bird discount. That ends October 3rd. So this weekend, you better buy it this weekend if that's what you want to do. You save an extra 20% by using code FTL20 when you check out through lifetimeliberty.com. The event, again, October 21st through the 23rd. It's in Prague, and the code that you need is FTL, like Free Talk Live, and the number 20 to get 20% off your tickets. And Mark hopes that he will see you there at the second annual Free Cities Foundation conference called Liberty in Our Lifetime. All right, we're going to go back to your calls and thoughts. Penguin is on the line in Virginia. You're on Free Talk Live. Penguin.
Hey, guys. Hey. I just tuned in real quick and listened to the tail end of Gigi's call with an important message about, kind of keeping an eye on and critical ear towards fascist adjacent and populist movements that are growing. I've been looking really closely at this Italian lady. But also, just minutes before that call, we just finished wrapping up a podcast episode that I was recording, where we really talked a lot about about two things, like criticizing global neoliberal capitalism and woke neoliberalism and all of this stuff, and the left, and also the rising kind of neo-reactionary, neo-fascist movements on the other side of the thing. And so if you look at this Italian lady, just as an example that we were kind of talking about at the tail end, she says things. Just go to Twitter, look at the video and the comments under. I mean, it's very, very captivating rhetoric that she uses in her speech.
How?
Well, in the same way that when you watch what's that famous Hitler speech, right? That everybody always plays to give an example of like a fascist.
Only one?
No, there's one specific one that gets replayed. The one the History Channel repeats over and over again. It's the one where he's in front. Maybe it's the Olympic speech. I'm not sure which one it is, but there's one specific Hitler speech that gets played far more than, it's like his greatest hit, if you will, that gets played far more than everyone else. And when I saw part of what Penguin is talking about, the Italian lady's speech, and as I'm watching it, now she's speaking Italian, which I don't speak. I had an Italian girlfriend for a while, so like I kind of get the some of the words and that kind of a thing. But what I'm watching this speech, it has all of the hallmarks of that same famous Hitler speech that I'm thinking of in my head.
It does,
including the yelling.
Yeah, no, she gets very passionate and very loud.
Huh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she's talking about family, traditional family, and God and country, and having an identity, that we're all individuals and genetically unique, and that we shouldn't be slaves to global corporations and financial speculators and all this stuff that I think we would all agree with, and a lot of people would agree with. A lot of people that would have been from the either libertarians or from the left in the past would kind of find very captivating. Very, very short on policy, not really mentioning what she's actually going to do about it.
Right.
But and it's very easy, I think, to get wrapped up in that kind of rhetoric.
Well,
about
I mean, look
having
at Trump. They
identity
called him a
and nation and
populist,
family.
right? And to me, this idea of populism, and according to what your definition was, Peakless, the idea of pandering, because it's just pandering, right, to the people, saying, oh, well, the people are what matter. We need the people to be in charge. We
Or
drain the swamp.
addressing things in such a way that the people identify with you to support you.
But that's the thing. You're not talking about electing the people. You're talking about electing somebody who is an elite, somebody like a Donald Trump, or I presume this woman is probably fairly successful on her own.
Imagine if all of the things that Donald Trump said were delivered by somebody like Barack Obama. That's the level this lady was on, in my opinion, right? When I saw her thing. But because, like, Trump isn't really, he's kind of dumb, right? And so the things that he said might resonate with a certain subset of people in the United States. But Barack Obama was slick and eloquent and, used multisyllabic words and, an orator, if you will. Right. Now imagine if you, like, put both of them into a blender. Right, that's kind of the level that I felt that this Italian lady was on.
Well, as always, when it comes to politicians, you need to believe what they do, not what they say.
Agreed.
And this woman has already indicated that she is supporting Ukraine. So if this person, and apparently according to Kwabena in our Twitch chat, her name is Giorgia Maloney.
Yep.
If this person actually cared about the little guy, then she would get out of the Ukraine conflict and make it so that they can have heating gas for the wintertime and keep the little guy warm. But no, she's all about fighting in Ukraine and supporting the the Western hegemony.
Yeah,
so she's no different.
There.
Huh?
That's a head scratcher there. And
why is it a head scratcher? She's just like the rest of them. She just has different rhetoric.
It's not confusing. She's just lying.
Yeah, same thing with Trump. He said he was going to drain the swamp, and look what happened.
He hired them.
Right.
But it's the power of somebody to give an impassioned speech to capture people's attention and make them go, oh, my gosh. Well, I should vote for her because she gives an impassioned speech.
You bring up Barack Obama as an example.
Yes.
Remember, he was going to close Guantanamo Bay and hope and change.
Oh, and he was going to put every new bill that came across his desk online for the people to see for 2 weeks or whatever before it was signed. And none of that happened.
Yeah, and something I'd like to remind any Trump fans listening is that he kept Fauci in power this entire time.
Sure enough.
Anything else, Penguin?
Yeah, just it's a real head scratcher what the kind of more fascist right is going to think of her support for Ukraine and NATO, and for her.
Well, if she's a fascist right winger, then supporting Ukraine makes sense. There's Nazis over there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. I don't know what people are going to make of it. For example, on the American right that have been kind of defending Putin, some that criticize Israel. But I think it's natural to support Israel if you're a fascist. I think that's the kind of government they want to see with all the migrants and everything, which, it's a problem. But just fascism isn't the way.
Well, none of these isms is the way, unless it's just freedom. Thanks for the call, Penguin. I appreciate it. The number here is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. That said, we are stuck with these rulers, with these monsters, people like this woman in Italy, the president in the United States. I mean, all of them, not just Biden, but everyone prior to him and whoever comes after him, until we can finally get people to want and to understand the ideas of liberty. And of course, freedom means not just your freedom to live your life how you want, but to also allow others to live their lives how they want. If you can't do that, you yourself will never have any freedom.
It's no easy task to get people to love accountability.
If you want to join the show, the number is 603-283-6160. We'll get a little bit further into what Putin said recently about this situation that's brewing there in Ukraine and his critiques and rightful critiques of Western hegemony and dominance. More coming up here in moments. It is Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks with the Week in Review. And the week ended with US government officials saying that while Vladimir Putin has the potential to use nuclear weapons in the Ukraine conflict, they see no evidence that the use of those weapons is imminent. Those comments came at the end of a dizzying Friday that saw the Russian leader annex 4 regions of Ukraine, the US impose fresh sanctions on Russia, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky apply for immediate membership of NATO. US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan spoke about Vladimir Putin's furious Kremlin speech in which he denounced the United States and accused it of Satanism.
It's raving. The fact that he's using words like Satanism is, to me, precisely the kind of over-the-top rhetoric and ranting that you hear from someone who has no basis to justify what is a colonial and imperial land grab.
President Biden on Friday, in a message directed at the Russian leader, said the US will defend every inch of NATO territory, and he denied US or NATO involvement in this week's alleged sabotage of pipelines beneath the Baltic Sea. In Britain, the new government of Prime Minister Liz Truss spent the week reeling from a fiscal and political crisis sparked by her Chancellor's tax-cutting mini-budget a week ago. It brought a stunning rebuke from the International Monetary Fund. The fund joined other critics accusing the British government of boosting inequality and demanded a U-turn, but the UK Prime Minister is digging in. At one point, the pound hit a record low against the dollar. FSN's Ollie Barrett is in our London bureau.
What the Prime Minister and the Chancellor are trying to do here is show international markets and investors, but also Conservative MPs and the wider electorate, that they are taking some of those criticisms seriously when it comes to things like their ability to fund that tax-cutting package.
But the week ended with some Conservative Party lawmakers reportedly planning to try and block some of their government's own proposals. South Carolina became the second American state to feel the full force of Hurricane Ian. The storm made landfall there on Friday afternoon. By then, Florida was beginning a massive cleanup where the city of Fort Myers had been destroyed.
I literally watched my house disappear with everything in it. Right before my eyes.
At least 21 people were killed by the storm. President Biden warned those numbers would rise. Iran continued to be rocked by violent unrest this week, sparked by the death in custody of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini, arrested by the morality police for failing to wear her head covering correctly. The Iranian regime has struggled to put down a growing revolt and is claiming foreign agents are fueling the unrest. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. The phones are open, and you can join us here. Got some serious air guitar going on in the studio tonight right now. If you're watching us online, we appreciate you being there. If you're just listening, we certainly appreciate that. More people listen than watch. Way more, by the way.
I helped win an air guitar competition at a former employer.
Nice. You helped win.
I helped win because, they wanted people to, form an air band and then perform your air band song of choice at this company function, and whoever did the best would win, I don't know, a day off or,
I see.
you know,
So your
something.
team won.
Only because I actually play guitar or actually have played guitar, and so it seemed more realistic.
So you knew what you were doing.
Yeah, because like when you move to the music,
Right.
it seems like you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, I don't air guitar for them. In the words of Ayn Rand after fellatio, I did this for me.
Good. We're going to go to your phone calls where you can call in about anything you want, and the number here is 603-283-6160. Let's start here with Bill. He's in North Dakota listening on the radio in Tioga. Go ahead, Bill.
I'm calling because I've heard all week that the storm decided in Florida was part of climate change. Well, one thing I know, we can't do much about climate change. God has been doing it for years, and he's doing it now. And I believe some of the storms is the good Lord judging us as a nation and as a world. But we got.
You don't think storms happened before the nation was created?
I don't think storms have. I don't know. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
But I believe that we've had ice ages. We have had heat waves, and it's been down in secular history, and God changes those things. He made the icebergs. He helped make the oceans and the streams, and he helped make the deserts.
I don't know about all that, but I certainly can say that humankind hasn't recorded enough history of weather and earthly phenomenon to know what the larger cycles are, because the earth existed long before humans did.
Yeah.
And so, like, even earthquakes, they say, like on the West Coast, they're like, oh, we're overdue for a big one because every, 100 years or something, there's a big earthquake, and so we're long overdue. Well, okay, that might be true, but perhaps we're just in a larger cycle that humankind has not been able to record yet.
Yeah, that could be.
And along the same lines of, like, widen your perspective on this. So they call it global warming. Okay, here's the thing.
Well, they used to.
Every other, or climate change. Okay, every other planet in the solar system is going through the same climate change.
Right.
The weather on Mars and Venus is also increasing.
Constantly changing.
So, I mean, like, and specifically, the temperatures on Venus and Mars are also increasing, and no one's SUV is doing that.
I tend to have the belief that humans are essentially ants here on the planet, and the idea that people could have some sort of significant long-term effect on what Mother Nature wants to do, whether you want to call it God or Mother Nature or the universe or whatever you want to call it, I think is absolutely ridiculous. And the idea that paying more taxes to a government is going, like, even if you did buy the idea that people could change the planet, the idea that the government, the most ineffective organization of humans to ever exist, could have any kind of effect on the planet is absolutely absurd. What it will do is will impoverish people, and it will enslave people. And that's the whole point. That's what they're trying to do here with climate change and all this, the fear-mongering around it, Bill, is to get people to give up more of their freedoms, just like they did during COVID.
Yep.
The climate change thing is next. And by the way, the World Economic Forum has a whole big paper out right now about how they want to introduce apps for people to be mandated to carry, to restrict the amount of carbon that they're able to emit, and force them to be responsible for it. It's ridiculous.
And rest assured that will be built into the central bank digital currencies.
Scary
and they
stuff.
will shut your bank account down because you ate too many cheeseburgers.
Bill, thanks for the call tonight. Do appreciate hearing from you. Let's go to Major Payne in Michigan. You're on Free Talk Live. Major.
Yeah, you guys are talking about carbon. You think about the Jurassic area when the whole Earth was shifting. There was volcanoes puking everywhere, and the herbivores were ginormous, and the plant life flourished. Global warming? Carbon tax? I think not. My perplexion, when I was a kid, I remember hearing that the North Pole was shifting by like 3 feet a year.
I remember that.
And now I just heard a while back that it's better than 30 miles a year. And I heard a projection a while ago that Florida would be, or Michigan would be Florida. But we got fresh
Still
water.
waiting.
You can't drink oil, buddy. You can't drink oil.
Well, you can. It's just not going to go well.
Not unless you're the Tin Man there, Dorothy.
Well,
or Bender from Futurama.
So weirdly enough, you can't drink oil, but we do actually eat oil. So, I mean, for every calorie that you eat, over 2,000 calories of oil was expended to get there.
That's not petroleum, though. That's vegetable or...
Oh, yeah. Where do you think our fertilizers come from? Those are petrochemicals, my friend. And
yeah, well, I prefer my fertilizer out of the back end of a jackass.
There you go.
Me too.
That I'll vote for right there.
Thanks, Major, for the call tonight. Appreciate hearing from you.
I wonder if there's ever going to be a character that calls in called Minor Pain.
Speaking of jackasses, we were reading a speech.
Hey, what are you trying to say?
The summary of a speech from Putin. And, of course, I'm not saying he's any worse than any of the rest of them out there.
Oh, he's a jackass.
But he's the one that, at the very least, appears to be fairly accurate when it comes to criticizing the West and its domination over the planet, or its attempt at dominating the planet. And that's what he got into at his recent speech. We're going to continue with a summary here from Konstantin Kisin, Kisin, at Substack.com is his website. So Putin goes on to say that the Western elites are totalitarian, despotic, and apartheidistic, that they are racist against Russia and other countries and nations.
It's a weird word, apartheidistic.
They discriminate by calling themselves the civilized world. They colonized, started the global slave trade, genocided Native Americans, pillaged India and Africa, forced China to buy opium through war. He says that Russia, on the other hand, are proud that they led the anti-colonial movement that helped countries develop to reduce poverty and inequality. I have no idea whether that's true. But they are Russophobic, he says, and that they hate Russia and the Russian people because, he says, we didn't allow our country to be pillaged by creating a strong centralized state based on Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and Buddhism. So he's saying their state is strong and centralized, and that to him that's a good thing. Now, obviously, to us as voluntarists and anarchists and such, we don't agree with that. But he's saying that their strong state prevented the Western world from coming in and rampaging in over Russia. He says they've been trying to destabilize our country since the 17th century in the times of trouble. Eventually, they managed to get their hands on our riches at the end of the 20th century. They called us friends and partners while pumping out trillions of dollars. We remember this. We didn't forget. The West claims to bring freedom and democracy to other countries, but it's the exact opposite of the truth. Now, that's a fact. The unipolar world is anti-democratic by its very nature. It is a lie. They use nuclear weapons, creating a precedent. That's a good point. He's referring, of course, to Hiroshima and Nagasaki there. They flattened German cities without any military need to do so. There was no need for this except to scare us and the rest of the world. Korea, Vietnam, to this day they occupy Japan, South Korea, and Germany and other countries while cynically calling them allies. And of course, he's referring to the military bases that exist in God knows how many nations, hundreds of several hundred plus military bases.
The empire.
Yeah, it is a true empire. And no empire can last forever. So the question is, what is going to end this one? Will it end itself by printing itself into oblivion?
That seems to be the path that it's on right now.
Or will it print itself at the same time as getting itself into another endless conflict, and then, of course, have an excuse to print ever more? The number here is 603-283-6160. A little bit more of Putin on the subject in moments. Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 15th through the 18th for the 7th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out in 2022. For 2023, we're going back to where it all started, the weekend before PorcFest. ForkFest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 15th through the 18th. You can find out more at the unofficial website forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 15th through the 18th. forkfest.party. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191. Do you prefer to listen to Free Talk Live on your schedule on demand? You can find the link to our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com, which features the daily digest of our radio show 7 days a week. Just drop our RSS feed into your favorite podcast client or subscribe to us on the large platforms if you prefer, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartMedia, Spotify, and Stitcher. All the links are at feeds.freetalklive.com. If the daily digests aren't enough for you and you really don't want to miss a moment of Free Talk Live, you can always sign up for our AMPS Patreon at amps.freetalklive.com for just $5 a month, and you'll get the full radio show without recorded commercials. Plus, you'll help us advertise, market, promote, and support Free Talk Live. That's amps.freetalklive.com to join AMPS, or feeds.freetalklive.com to get our main podcast, or find us on the major podcast platforms. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live Saturday show. Phones are open. If you want to join us, you can. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And you can join us online over at freetalklive.com, where we have a variety of features, and you can help us out. You can, for instance, follow us on our video platform. And we're on a bunch of video platforms, but the one we really like to tell you about, the one that we think is the most reliable, is Odyssey. And you can follow us there at video.freetalklive.com. We certainly would appreciate it. The rest of them, we don't know how long we're going to be there. YouTube likes to ban us from time to time. Eventually, they may just decide to ban us permanently, instead of just striking the channel.
Bound to happen eventually.
It seems like it. So again, video.freetalklive.com. And also, the Ballad of the Crypto 6 is potentially in production. They're looking for some backers, and they put up an Indiegogo. And I'm really glad they made this move, because people expect to get something when
Wait, who are they?
There's a Mexican production team that has taken on this particular project of making a movie about the FBI raid on the Crypto 6 that happened, which is some of our hosts were involved in that raid.
Absolutely.
I'm one of them, and so that happened back in March. The movie website is Ballad of the Crypto 6 with the number 6.com. That's where you can learn more. You can watch a teaser 9-minute long trailer
I've seen it.
that they've already put together. It is pretty good. Give you some feel for what the full-length documentary film would be like. And they're, of course, offering perks for people that are going to step up and support the production of the film that go from Ballad of the Crypto 6 t-shirts to potentially even hosting Free Talk Live and having dinner with some of your favorite hosts if you want as well. So go to Ballad of the Crypto 6 with the numeral 6.com. As we go to your phone calls, Scott is in Michigan listening to WBCK on the FM band. Go ahead, Scott.
Hi. I wanted to bring up the Tonga volcano that erupted undersea in January.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that.
As far as climate change, and the article that I read stated that 58,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools were ejected into our stratosphere, and it also said that it could be 5 to 10 years for that to dissipate.
I'm not real clear. Are you talking about swimming pools full of ash, or what are we talking about? Water.
So the seawater that got evaporated?
So it boiled the sea is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
This was an undersea volcano that erupted. There's a satellite video of it.
Okay.
And it is incredible. I mean, we've known for a long time that one volcano can spew enough carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide or whatever into the atmosphere to just rival anything man's ever done.
Oh, sure.
But this one here was different in that it spewed water, which I believe is also considered a global warming thing, water in the atmosphere. Because it reflects heat down. But I wonder why it's not been mentioned at all. Zero mention of it.
I can tell you one reason that it's not been mentioned. So all of the definitions that the UN uses for climate change, so in the definition, it requires that it be caused by human beings. But when they talk about it, they just refer to it as climate change. And since this wasn't caused by human beings, according to UN definitions, it wasn't climate change.
Wait, so solar flares, even though we know that they happen and they happen frequently, and they affect the entire planet, solar flares are not considered part of climate change?
Yeah.
According to UN definitions, that's correct.
How convenient.
They want us to believe that the sun is a light bulb in the sky that burns steady, and it doesn't.
No, that's not true.
And we've also got planets that have effects. Jupiter is an amazing mass out there. It's weighs more than all the rest of the planets combined. And I can't believe that that there isn't a organization or a group that isn't pushing these narratives that really remind us how little you were talking about mankind. We're just ants on the earth.
Yep.
And there are so many things that are so much bigger than us that have more effect than we could ever produce.
Yeah. I mean, the hubris of man to suggest that it can have some sort of control over this planet. It just seems so ridiculous to me on its face.
I'm paraphrasing George Carlin, but, too much plastic in the ocean. The Earth doesn't care. The plastic came from the Earth. It'll take care of it just fine in a couple thousand years. It's not even a big deal. And when planet Earth is done with humankind, it'll shake us off like a bad case of fleas.
I mean, to be fair, Captain, I don't like the idea of, little sea animals getting plastic things all around their necks. Or
Absolutely.
That's not cool.
Yeah, I'm not saying that that's cool, but I'm just saying that, for us, the hubris of mankind to believe that anything we do, maybe
that
perhaps
we will have a permanent effect on the Earth.
Yeah, perhaps global, thermonuclear war. Perhaps that might have some effect on planet Earth.
Right, even that won't have a permanent effect.
Right.
It'll take thousands and thousands and thousands of years to dissipate, but it's not a permanent effect.
Well, there are, like you brought up the plastic. That is something that we could do something about.
Yes.
But without
and we should do something about it as responsible people.
Yeah, both preventative and curative.
Right. Dump your plastic in a landfill where it belongs, cover it up, and turn it into a park.
Or recycle it into something else somehow.
Thank you, Scott, for the call tonight.
Paper bags.
Man, I do appreciate hearing from you. And so whatever the market would decide, I think is fine. And thanks, Scott. The number here is 603-283-6160. I'm enjoying the radio participation here tonight. We don't get enough folks calling in from our radio affiliates, but we've had some tonight, so I appreciate it.
And I just wanted to say that he said he can't believe that there's not a group that's pushing this. You shouldn't believe that there's not a group that's pushing this. I mean, there is nothing more helpful to the cause of statism than these things that can only be solved by mass participation.
The number is 603-283-6160. And, of course, a lot of the proposed solutions that they want to shove down your throat with government mandates, I oppose. So, yeah, I don't like the idea of plastic straws getting shoved up a tortoise's nose, which that video looks fake. I don't know if you've ever seen that video. But
or even the old school, the six-pack rings,
that one
kind of thing, and everybody was snipping those before they threw them away.
I don't want those things to happen, but at the same time, I don't want people to be, to be forced to use something like these terrible paper straws. I don't know if y'all have ever tried to use these things. They're absolutely horrible.
I have, and they do suck.
And, of course, they always come in a plastic wrapper, too. So it's like, come on. What's the point of this? But let the market decide. If people really do value these things, then they will make these choices on their own volition. We don't need government mandates to do this.
Well, we saw that with the six-pack rings. I don't know if you've looked at like a six-pack or a four-pack of like craft beer recently, but they're no longer the plastic rings. They're the full circular tops that, so it's a little bit of a plastic circle and then a full circular top so that it's not an open ring. Anymore.
Is that why they did that?
Yeah, so the market has already said, well, okay, we recognize that this is a problem. Let's do something about it. Let's
spend an extra
in a
cent
way
on plastic.
Yeah, and okay, problem solved, right? We're no longer killing, innocent, geese or whoever was getting caught in these rings, right? So, but you're absolutely right. That is a market response to a human observation, right? Hey, we've observed that this thing that you do for your product causes X. Is there a thing you can do to prevent X? Yes, there is, and we've gone ahead and done it, right? That is exactly how the market is supposed to work, and it didn't take government mandating that to happen, right? Which is what a lot of people believe. As soon as they find something that's wrong, they're like, we got to get the government to do a thing. It's like, no, you don't. Just let the industry know.
Yeah, and there's always this belief that these can only be solved by a mass movement that has to be organized from the top.
Yeah.
So let's assume hypothetically that the planet warming is an actual problem. Well, a solution exists in pumping enough of the seawater into the air to reduce the temperature of the planet. That is a possible solution for that problem that does not require massive organized activity among all people of the planet Earth.
But see, I want the planet to get warmer.
Yeah, me too.
So some of us are going to work against it.
No, more people died from cold than from heat, and I'm pro-people. I'm in favor of making the world inhabitable for human beings.
I'm also in favor of people, despite my dislike of the majority of people.
Well, that's why we're against politicians, because we actually, want people to succeed.
Right.
And the political process and politics, governments of the world, states stand in the way of progress. The number is 603-283-6160. And you can join the show here, by the way. Hour number 3 is coming up. This is the live Saturday edition of Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160. More coming up. Inflation, a sidelined labor force, and ever-increasing interest rates. It's the perfect storm for pushing the U.S. economy over the edge. Savvy investors are diversifying into gold and silver with BullionMax.com. You can buy direct from BullionMax.com without talking to a salesperson, and your precious metals will ship fully insured directly to your home. Free Talk Live listeners can now order one of BullionMax's most popular products, the Goldback. Now in stock, but supplies are going fast. To get your Goldbacks, go to BullionMax.com/FTL.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to mymagicmud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. mymagicmud.com, FTL20.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks with the Week in Review. And the week ended with US government officials saying that while Vladimir Putin has the potential to use nuclear weapons in the Ukraine conflict, they see no evidence that the use of those weapons is imminent. Those comments came at the end of a dizzying Friday that saw the Russian leader annex 4 regions of Ukraine, the US impose fresh sanctions on Russia, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky apply for immediate membership of NATO. US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan spoke about Vladimir Putin's furious Kremlin speech in which he denounced the United States and accused it of Satanism.
It's raving. The fact that he's using words like Satanism is to me precisely the kind of over-the-top rhetoric and ranting that you hear from someone who has no basis to justify what is a colonial and imperial land grab.
President Biden on Friday, in a message directed at the Russian leader, said the US will defend every inch of NATO territory, and he denied US or NATO involvement in this week's alleged sabotage of pipelines beneath the Baltic Sea. In Britain, the new government of Prime Minister Liz Truss spent the week reeling from a fiscal and political crisis sparked by her Chancellor's tax-cutting mini-budget a week ago. It brought a stunning rebuke from the International Monetary Fund. The fund joined other critics accusing the British government of boosting inequality and demanded a U-turn, but the UK Prime Minister is digging in. At one point, the pound hit a record low against the dollar. FSN's Ollie Barrett is in our London bureau.
What the Prime Minister and the Chancellor are trying to do here is show international markets and investors, but also Conservative MPs and the wider electorate, that they are taking some of those criticisms seriously when it comes to things like their ability to fund that tax-cutting package.
But the week ended with some Conservative Party lawmakers reportedly planning to try and block some of their government's own proposals. South Carolina became the second American state to feel the full force of Hurricane Ian. The storm made landfall there on Friday afternoon. By then, Florida was beginning a massive cleanup where the city of Fort Myers had been destroyed.
I literally watched my house disappear with everything in it. Right before my eyes.
At least 21 people were killed by the storm. President Biden warned those numbers would rise. Iran continued to be rocked by violent unrest this week, sparked by the death in custody of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini, arrested by the morality police for failing to wear her head covering correctly. The Iranian regime has struggled to put down a growing revolt and is claiming foreign agents are fueling the unrest. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. US stocks will be looking to rebound in the current trading week as we enter the last quarter of 2022. Last week was a brutal one for the markets as recession fears dominated investor sentiment. With the preview from FSN's business desk in New York, Gabrielle Farmi reports.
Investors are hoping the markets take a turn as we enter the fourth quarter of what's been a difficult year. September is usually a bad month on Wall Street, and this one was no exception. The S&P 500, the Dow Jones, and the Nasdaq all plummeted about 9%, reaching lows not seen since late 2020. All eyes will be on the monthly jobs data released by the Bureau of Labor Statistics on Friday morning. There are 2 more Federal Reserve meetings in 2022 to talk about interest rates, and the Fed has hinted it could very well continue its aggressive hike through the end of the year to slow inflation.
In a groundbreaking judgment, India's Supreme Court ruled that all women are entitled to legal abortion regardless of their marital status. The court said depriving unmarried women of the right to abortion was a violation of their rights. From FSN's bureau in Mumbai, Rebecca Bundan covered that story.
India's top court on Thursday ruled that making a distinction between an unmarried and married woman when it comes to the right to have a safe and legal abortion is unconstitutional. The Supreme Court said that unmarried women would be equally entitled to terminate an unwanted pregnancy within 24 weeks. The judgment also saw the court recognise marital rape when it comes to abortion, extending the definition of rape under the Termination of Pregnancy Act to include marital rape.
Stories will report in the coming week, the first round of Brazil's presidential election. The US will unveil more aid for Ukraine, and the Nobel Prizes will be handed out. Those stories here and on the news programmes of our broadcast partners worldwide. And that is the Week in Review from Feature Story News. Simon Marks reporting.
It's now been 7 days since a group of hikers went missing in Maine's Acadia National Park, but rescue crews there are still holding out hope of finding them alive. Autistic reporter Michael Falk is on the scene there. Michael.
Hello, Brooke. My socks got wet. That cameraman gave me new socks. I am fine.
That's good, Michael, but what's the situation there?
The names of the hikers are Casey Allman, Brian Emery, Ashley Thorson. The hikers were last seen 174 hours ago. Since then, 3 very big storms have hit here. There's a 1.24% chance that all of the hikers are alive. Why are you looking for the hikers?
Well, we're still hopeful that we might be able to find them. There's been a break in the weather, so we're hoping that...
Over the past 7 days, the average high temperature has been 21 degrees Fahrenheit. Over the past 7 days, the average low temperature has been 6 degrees Fahrenheit.
Right. So we did another sweep of the park from the air, but we didn't see anything.
Without shelter, the human body can withstand temperatures this cold for a maximum of 3 hours. Is there shelter in the forest for the hikers?
Not that we know of.
They are frozen.
Well, we like this.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. We're kicking off the third hour of the program. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here in the studio tonight, it's Ian,
Peakless Mountaineer,
and an enthusiastic guy named the Captain.
We've had a variety of callers on various different issues here tonight. We started out talking about the potential for World War III, something that none of us want to see happen. But it seems like the powers that be are inching their way forward.
The only
to it.
world war that anybody should be waging is the war for individual independence, in my opinion.
Indeed.
Yeah, and that doesn't really even have to be a war. It could just be opting out.
Says you.
Well, I mean, they're going to get violent, right?
That's my point.
But we should not be bringing violence against them. And when I say them, I mean the government people, the evil individuals that are in these positions
of violent
power.
thugs.
Right. Yeah. But if enough people start acting individually, governments just sort of go away.
Mm-hmm.
If enough of them do, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
You could, like, for instance, not paying them, not obeying them, and
all
trying to ignore them would be ideal.
Yep. And even if you have to pay them eventually, slowing down their payments actually has a surprisingly large effect. Because, like, every single government in on the planet today is way overdrawn on all of their debts. And the thing about debt is that these things are timed, so you have to keep your payments up. So if you slow down even 1 red cent going to the government, that actually puts them in a rough position.
Well, the federal government will just print more money out. So,
well,
even that,
but
even that, like, that can only go so far, especially in today's world. Now, before, Bitcoin existed, I'd be like, yeah, there's no solution there. However, now they actually have to compete with real money.
That's
so
true.
every single time that they buy their own bonds so that they can print more money, they're weakening their own position.
Yep, that's true. And they know that they are in trouble, and that's why they're lashing out at cryptocurrency in as many ways as they possibly can.
Yeah.
And it's just starting to. They're not done. Like I predict it's going to get worse before
They just figured it out what it was.
Unless, of course, a whole bunch of people begin to act in an individual way and opt out of these government currencies. If you enjoy peace, then you should immediately adopt the most peaceful currency that ever existed on planet Earth, and that's cryptocurrency. That's Bitcoin specifically.
It doesn't support war.
Right.
When you do that.
Now, did you say they figured out what it is?
I mean, they're trying to. They're closer now. Some of them have. Like, there's a Federal Reserve paper that came out a few years ago that had it down pretty well. I mean, it just depends who you're asking. I mean, if you talk to politicians, they have no clue. But if you talk to certain professionals in the government, they know. They know. The West, by the way, this is so what we've been sharing here with you tonight is a translation and a summary, because the translation is much longer, of a speech by Vladimir Putin that he gave just a couple days ago, when he was signing off on the annexing of the territories in the eastern part of Ukraine that have apparently ostensibly voted to join Russia. He's lashing out against the Western hegemony, the domination, the empire of the Western nations, specifically the United States, and calling them out. Calling them out for Korea and Vietnam, specifically the U.S., occupying Japan, South Korea, and Germany still to this day, he says, while cynically calling them allies. He says further, the West has, and by the way, credit to Konstantin Kisin at Substack for the translation here. He says the West has surveillance over the leaders of these nations who, quote, swallow these insults like the slaves they are, unquote. He then talks about bioweapon research and human experiments, including in Ukraine. The U.S. rules the world by the power of the fist. Any country which seeks to challenge Western hegemony becomes an enemy. Their neocolonialism is cloaked in lies like containment, quote-unquote, of Russia, China, and Iran. The concept of truth has been destroyed with fakes and extreme propaganda. Obviously, he's not in favor of truth when it comes to his own government and the Russian people, but still, he is calling a spade in this case. You cannot feed your people with printed dollars and social media, he says. You need food and energy, but Western elites have no desire to find a solution to the food and energy crises that they have created. They solved the problems at the start of the 20th century with World War I, and the U.S. established dominance of the world via the dollar as a result of World War II. In the 80s, they had another crisis they solved by plundering our country. Now they want to solve their problems by breaking Russia, he says. Russia, quote, understands its responsibility to the international community and will do everything to cool the heads of these neocolonials who are destined to fail, unquote. They're crazy, said Putin. I want to speak to all Russian citizens. Do we want to replace mom and dad with parent 1 and 2? They've invented genders and claim you can transition. Do we want this for our children? We have a different vision. They have abandoned religion and embraced Satanism. The world is going through a revolutionary transformation. A multipolar world offers nations freedom to develop as they wish, and they make up the majority of the world. We have many like-minded friends in Western countries. We see and appreciate their support. They are forming liberation, anti-colonial movements as we speak. These will only grow. We are fighting for a fair world for our country. The idea of exceptionalism is criminal, and we must turn the shameful page. The breaking of the West's hegemony is inevitable, he says. There is no going back. We are fighting for, quote, our great, as in big, historic Russia, unquote. Our values are love for our fellow man, compassion, and mercy. I don't believe that.
You know what this sounds like to me? This sounds like Russia is jealous of the largesse of the U.S. empire.
And they want to be in that position?
They're like, oh, well, we better put ourselves as like the David and Goliath. If the U.S. is now Goliath, right, the Russia is now David. They want to put themselves in that light because they're jealous. They're jealous that the United States has a much larger empire than they do.
Are you suggesting that your first thought when thinking of Russians and Putin in particular is not mercy, love of your fellow man, and compassion?
Well, clearly he doesn't love trans people, right? He's referenced that.
And let me
directly.
be specific. I'm not talking about the Russian people. I'm talking about Putin and the rest of his tyrants that are called the Russian government, right? These are the people who are jealous of the tyrants of the U.S., right? So as far as the Russian people are concerned, I'm cool with them. You know, as long as they're not trying to harm anybody or take anybody's stuff or hurt anybody, I'm cool with them. What I'm not cool with is the tyrants.
Yep. Unfortunately, the Russian people are being punished for what this man is doing. There are websites all around the internet, companies all around the planet who are refusing to do business with Russians. We have a streaming service here on Free Talk Live that we paid for.
Yeah.
It's called Restream.io, and I'm not recommending it, by the way. I'm naming it so you know who not to do business with, because they recently decided that in the name of sanctions or whatever, punishing the Russian people, they were going to cut out all the Russian websites that they had supported restreaming to. So we have accounts on VK, which is a Russian version of Facebook, basically. They just essentially knocked off Facebook, and they do the same exact thing, just under a different name. It's not owned by Facebook. It's something different. In fact, I think the Telegram guy was one of the co-founders of it and then subsequently sold it, made a bunch of money. Anyway, VK is a very big website in Russia. And when I found Restream originally, they were supporting VK. And it's like, oh, well, here's some place we can stream to that we weren't streaming to. So kind of like we're on Odyssey and some of these other streaming platforms. You can find us on VK. And if you can understand English and you're in Russia and you want to or practice English or whatever, you can listen to this program. Not after Restream pulled the plug on VK. And I like looking at my streaming stuff, like, well, why are we streaming? What happened here? And
why would a private organization do something that follows the lead of a government organization?
It's just, they're just positioning themselves. It's the idea of indicating to their users that they care about Ukraine.
It's gaslighting, right?
Well, and for one, I would like to know how many shares of that company are owned by the various retirement funds of the various levels of government. So is that why they're listening to them?
Could be.
And I mean, this is just fascism. The government says we want X to be done, then all the companies do things that the government is not allowed officially to do.
Even though they didn't have to, it wasn't a mandate. They won't be punished if they allow streaming.
Yeah, but the threat is always there, just like every law.
It also means that Americans cannot reach this audience now with whatever message they might have. Even pro-Ukrainian messages cannot be brought through VK because of this. It's just so stupid. There's more coming up.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live listen line, 641-793-0191.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live. Phones are open. You can join the show. The number here is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Coming up later tonight, just about over an hour from now at 10:30 Eastern Time, Beard Talk Live is back with episode 7? Starting to lose track. There have been quite a few of these at this point.
I'm pretty sure last week was 6.
I think you're right.
This one will be 7. Lucky number 7.
Yeah, so tune into that tonight. It's over at video.freetalklive.com. That's our channel. If you want to get straight to the streaming page, go to watch.freetalklive.com.
We'll be premiering our sweet new logo.
Yeah, it looks nice.
Which you might have already seen if you're on like my, social media.
Did you get it from Fiverr?
I did, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
They're not charging $5 anymore these days, though.
No, it's a little more than. Well, there are things that you can get for $5 on Fiverr. Yeah, wow. There are still things, people offering stuff. People new to certain industries or trying to expand their skills, trying to break through into a thing.
That's cool.
I paid a little more than $5.
Okay. Check them out tonight, and if you want to get past episodes, of course, you can subscribe to our podcast over at feeds.freetalklive.com. Full episodes are going into that feed. If you're on our Patreon at amps.freetalklive.com, you are also getting full episodes there of Beard Talk Live, and of course it's live tonight at watch.freetalklive.com, 10:30 Eastern. It is not on broadcast radio because it can't be. It's you say things you're not supposed to say on the radio.
It's uncensored, and that's kind of one of the reasons that I like to do it, is because while I get to say all sorts of fun stuff here on Free Talk Live, I do not get to speak in the terminology and vernacular that I prefer to here on Free Talk Live.
Indeed. So we've been talking about the Russia-Ukraine situation, and things could be getting a lot uglier here after...
Ooh, I just thought of if you combine Ukraine with Russia, you get Ukrussia.
That's pretty brutal sounding.
Yeah. Sounds like a band name.
Anyway, what's been happening over there could be making things even more dangerous, with the Western nations refusing to acknowledge the votes that just happened over the last weekend for the eastern portions of Ukraine to join Russia. Russia is saying they're going to accept those areas into Russia and make them their own, and if Ukraine continues to attack those areas, they will defend it with the full gusto that they would defend any part of Mother Russia. So that could be escalating the conflict. And Speaking of escalating the conflict, a few days ago, Peakless Mountaineer, we reported here on Free Talk Live, and many have reported around the planet, that the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, an underwater pipeline in the Baltic Sea, so north, that sea that is north of Europe, has been attacked. It appears to have been exploded in some way, shape, or form, an underwater explosion targeting. It's still not clear exactly who did it or exactly how it was done, but there are some interesting theories and some interesting evidence.
One of my own.
Yes.
Sabatucci?
So let's...
Diabolical Sabotage.
Let's hear your theory on this, because we played earlier this week, and I'll find it again if you need me to play it, the clip of Joe Biden from February, where he says, this is before Ukraine was invaded by Russia, where he says if Russia invades Ukraine, he will be able to take down, he meaning Joe Biden and his ilk, will be able to take down the Nord Stream 2 pipeline.
And the question was asked, well, but how? That's Germany has control over that. I promise you that we will be able to do that.
We have our ways.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a crackpot theory, I guess, but maybe, just maybe, the guy who said, if A, then B, A did B. So
seems reasonable.
If the Ukraine gets if Ukraine gets invaded, then we will destroy this. This got destroyed. Just maybe he destroyed it.
Right? Who else could have done it?
Like if I said, if you rip on me 13 or 14 more times, I will punch you in the face. And then you ripped on me 13 or 14 more times, and then I punched you in the face.
Wait. And then I get punched in the face.
Okay.
And now I've got a black eye.
It might be reasonable to conclude that it was me who punched you in the face.
It might be.
Which I would never do because I don't support violence.
Okay, but the difference here, though, is if you punched him in the face, it would be visible on camera. I would witness it. He would remember it. In this case, it happened in the dead of night, 3 or 4, somewhere in that range in the morning or something like that. In underwater. And so there's not really like surveillance footage of this attack happening.
But there was seismic activity recorded in the area that indicated, at least from what I read, and I'm no expert in these things, but from what I read, indicated an explosion, not a tectonic event, not a volcanic event. Yeah, like it was like suddenly boom, right? Yeah. Kind of a thing. There was there's photo running around on all the social media of the bubbles popping up, that kind of a thing. I read that there was indeed U.S. military activity, submarine and Navy activity in the area just within like a day before this happened.
Oh, okay. See, I hadn't heard about the submarine activity. There was a video that actually...
I don't know if any of that's true. I'm just saying this is stuff that I read.
Well, there was actually a video that Not an Alt posted on our chat server today at chat.freetalklive.com, so you can get connected there. But he posted a link to what was like a half-hour long video, but it starts at 10-something minutes, and I'm sorry I don't have the video pulled up right now, but I did watch what was posted, and it's one of these like Flight Geek fanatic types that has access to one of these fancy flight tracking websites, like, because there's all kinds of apparently really cool detailed tools that people have now, where I've seen I think it's Matt, one of our co-hosts, he can just pull up an app on his phone and like look and see what airlines are flying around, like where we are, and see what their identities are and all that kind of stuff. Well, there's also even more complex programs for actual computers, and so this guy had one of these really complicated programs pulled up, and so it was like a globe thing, and he had it over the Baltic Sea at the time at which this thing was alleged to have occurred. And what happens? There's a military plane of some sort, and he identifies what the plane is, but the numbers of the plane are obscured. So you can't see it's not like XY12. Right. It's just a bunch of @ symbols. So you can't identify which plane exactly, but you can see where it came from and where it goes. And what it does is it goes over the Baltic Sea and then over whatever country it is that's like kind of nearby, and it does a refuel with one of its refueling planes for a while. So it meets another plane, flies in a circle, and refuels. And then it goes back and dips down from 20,000 feet to like 10,000 feet. And apparently the kind of plane this is the kind of plane its job is to communicate with underwater vessels like submarines.
Oh. okay.
So it's dipping down. It's the only plane, apparently, in this area at that time, and it's ostensibly from the U.S. military at around the same time when the explosions go off and Nord Stream 2 is sabotaged. So, yeah, maybe that's some evidence.
What did the Nord Stream pipeline know about Hillary Clinton?
Well, and it really is one of those like, it's a nice shop you've got here. It'd be a shame if something were to happen to it. And then you know for sure that they didn't pay their protection money.
Right.
And then something happened to their shop.
Right. I was going to use the mafia analogy. Like if a mafia came to you and said, hey, if you do this thing, we will X. We will destroy your shop. And this sounds like exactly what happened.
Of course, in this case, it's mafia versus mafia. It's the U.S. mafia versus the Russian mafia. And in this case, it's not just any old shop. It's a $20 billion natural gas pipeline that was loaded with gas at the time that it happened. There's more coming up here in moments, and you can join the show. It's Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks with the Week in Review. And the week ended with US government officials saying that while Vladimir Putin has the potential to use nuclear weapons in the Ukraine conflict, they see no evidence that the use of those weapons is imminent. Those comments came at the end of a dizzying Friday that saw the Russian leader annex 4 regions of Ukraine, the US impose fresh sanctions on Russia, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky apply for immediate membership of NATO. US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan spoke about Vladimir Putin's furious Kremlin speech in which he denounced the United States and accused it of Satanism.
It's raving. The fact that he's using words like Satanism is to me precisely the kind of over-the-top rhetoric and ranting that you hear from someone who has no basis to justify what is a colonial and imperial land grab.
President Biden on Friday, in a message directed at the Russian leader, said the US will defend every inch of NATO territory, and he denied US or NATO involvement in this week's alleged sabotage of pipelines beneath the Baltic Sea. In Britain, the new government of Prime Minister Liz Truss spent the week reeling from a fiscal and political crisis sparked by her Chancellor's tax-cutting mini-budget a week ago. It brought a stunning rebuke from the International Monetary Fund. The fund joined other critics accusing the British government of boosting inequality and demanded a U-turn, but the UK Prime Minister is digging in. At one point, the pound hit a record low against the dollar. FSN's Ollie Barrett is in our London bureau.
What the Prime Minister and the Chancellor are trying to do here is show international markets and investors, but also Conservative MPs and the wider electorate, that they are taking some of those criticisms seriously when it comes to things like their ability to fund that tax-cutting package.
But the week ended with some Conservative Party lawmakers reportedly planning to try and block some of their government's own proposals. South Carolina became the second American state to feel the full force of Hurricane Ian. The storm made landfall there on Friday afternoon. By then, Florida was beginning a massive cleanup where the city of Fort Myers had been destroyed.
I literally watched my house disappear with everything in it. Right before my eyes.
At least 21 people were killed by the storm. President Biden warned those numbers would rise. Iran continued to be rocked by violent unrest this week, sparked by the death in custody of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini, arrested by the morality police for failing to wear her head covering correctly. The Iranian regime has struggled to put down a growing revolt and is claiming foreign agents are fueling the unrest. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. Phones are open here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. By the way, I want to say thank you to AC, the Quaker Anarchist. AC is a supporter of our AMPS program. AMPS stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support. It is a way for you to help us get the ideas of liberty into more ears on more radio stations and elsewhere. You can get some perks and some benefits for doing that.
I feel like there should be a portmanteau there, Quaker Anarchist, but like everything I come up with just doesn't work.
Anar-Quaker.
There you go. AAC, the Quaker Anarchist, thank you for joining the AMPS program at amps.freetalklive.com and the over now 100 supporters on AMPS. So thank you. Yes, thank you, everybody. That deserves
thank
some
you all
applause.
very much.
So, and again, it's Patreon, so you can do debit card, credit card, or PayPal, whatever way works best for you at amps.freetalklive.com. And all we ask is $5 a month, which is what AC is doing. So definitely appreciate the support as we continue here. We've been talking about the Nord Stream 2 pipeline mystery.
Why is it called Nord Stream?
Nord in relation to like the Nordic
Nord
countries?
means north.
Okay.
It's a northern
why not
stream.
call it the North Stream instead of the Nord Stream? Like who named this damn thing?
Because it goes through the Nordic countries.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they also have like a Turkish stream of some sort.
When I was working for the carnival, I worked for this show, and they had a gondola wheel, which is a Ferris wheel, but with much larger, instead of like the 2-seater things, they had like these hot tub looking things where you get like 6-7 people in a thing. A gondola, right? And so it was huge. It was over 100 feet in the air, whatever.
Wow.
The genius who named it called it the Giant Wheel. And I was like, really? That's
it.
That's somebody got paid. How do I get this job naming things that are amazingly, just observational?
You got to move up in the ranks in the carny world, man.
I guess.
There you go.
You didn't decide it was worth doing, apparently.
Got to get your own giant wheel.
The Giant Wheel.
So the theory here, and it seems to be supported by some people, including Putin, who also theorizes that it was indeed the United States and the UK that were behind the explosion on Nord Stream 2. And by the way, it's worth pointing out here, Nord Stream 1 was the pipeline that was in the news prior to this because Russia had cut down this is the one going into Germany, and I believe Nord Stream 2 also goes into Germany. Nord Stream 1 was the one that they cut from normal service down to 20% in July. And then they turned it off at the end of August when they said they were going to do repairs, but they never turned it back on.
They weren't doing repairs. They were demanding repairs on Germany's side.
Well,
which no one actually believed.
As I understood it, they claimed they couldn't do the necessary repairs because of the sanctions that are prohibiting them from receiving parts from some of the, I think it's Canada where the parts are being manufactured. So because of the sanctions by the Western nations, they can't get the parts in that they say they need to fix the problems.
If
with Nord
only
Stream
they
1.
had a 3D printer.
And so I think they're probably metal parts, but regardless, custom manufactured stuff that you can only get from, certain locations.
Come on, man.
But that's just the excuse, right? That's what they're saying. Maybe they can make it in Russia. I don't know, and they're just choosing not to and using this as a bargaining chip. And
that is absolutely what was occurring there.
Yeah. So
and it's worth pointing out what Russia has to lose from this, because they actually do want a good relationship with Germany. They just also want the Donbass and, preferably the southern part of Ukraine that is close to Crimea.
Sure, they would love for Germany to buy their gas from them, But
and that was one of the things about this, is that was sort of the carrot that they were able to wield with the possibility of peace, is, hey, if you want to not freeze to death this winter, just turn on the pipeline. The
Correct.
gas is already there, and here's billions of gallons a year coming right at you. Just flip the
say
switch.
yes.
Yeah.
And that's literally what Putin was saying before the thing was bombed. So the idea that Russia bombed their own pipeline just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make economic sense or anything.
I mean, it's possible. It's possible that they're doing like a Reichstag fire here to change the political climate on this, because it is so unlikely that it is Russia that caused this destruction, and so very, very likely that it was the United States.
Well,
because
cui bono, who benefits?
Exactly,
right?
exactly. The United States is exactly who benefits, because now Russia doesn't have that carrot to dangle in front of Germany to ask for peace, and now Russia is separated from Germany just a little bit more than it used to be.
And of course, this is, I mean, whether you see it this way or not, it seems like an attack on Germany to some extent, doesn't it? Because I mean, you're basically making it so these people are going to have an even more difficult time this winter. They were already preparing for difficulty with the loss of Nord Stream 1. Now they have no option for Nord Stream 2.
Take note of who really pays for this. It's not the governments. It's not these tyrants.
It's the people.
It's the people. Yeah. Like, people are going to freeze this winter because these self-absorbed, arrogant, narcissistic tyrants can't get along with each other and refuse to battle it out themselves. Instead, it's everybody else who pays the price.
Putin accused Washington, according to RT.com, of trying to pressure the EU into banning Russian supplies to, quote, completely get its hands, meaning Washington's hands, on the European market. But the sanctions are no longer enough for them, he said. Saying further, they have turned to sabotage. It's unbelievable, but it's a fact. By organizing the explosions on the Nord Stream international gas pipelines, they de facto began the destruction of the common European energy infrastructure. It's obvious to everyone who benefits from it. Those who benefit are the ones who have done it. He said.
And it makes sense, because, look, if something terrible happened to Pepsi, I would take a real close look at Coca-Cola. And the number one producer of oil in the world is the United States. The number two producer
of oil.
Really? Yes. Yeah, with our fracking technology increases.
Our fracking technology.
Yep.
Is fracking for oil or gas?
I don't know. It's petroleum products, but as I understand it, it's for both. But I mean, anyone out there who wants to weigh in on fracking technology, please let me know.
And not to mention the U.S. is sitting on a ton of oil reserves that they just capped. They find these things, they drill a hole, put a cap on it.
Yeah, we had the tar sands were a source for oil specifically that we did not have much ability to get much oil out of, but the technology increased. And since the technology improved, so did our ability to pull it out, and that moved America to the number one producer of petroleum products. So yeah, this is number one and number two in the world. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that the number one producer of oil was not happy with the number two producer of oil having such access to this market.
So Putin may be onto something.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It is by far the most likely outcome.
And U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken denounced Putin's statement as, quote, part of outrageous misinformation and disinformation campaigns, saying further, I really have nothing to say to the absurd allegation from President Putin that we or other partners or allies are somehow responsible for this. So that's it's just a blanket denial. Even though Joe Biden said in February that he would do this. He promised this as a consequence to Russia for invading Ukraine.
I don't know. He called it absurd. That's a pretty good argument. I don't know.
Just to use the magic rectangle to verify what we've claimed, a quick search engine search that I will not name says, despite the ongoing impact the pandemic has had on the U.S., oil production in the U.S. remained the world's top oil producer in 2021 at 11.2 million BPD. Russia and Saudi Arabia retain their positions at 2 and 3.
I want to give credit to the YouTube channel. This is Monkey Works US. Monkey, W-E-R-X, 2 words. Monkey Works, and then US. That's the person who has this fancy software that he was showing. It's called Skyglass. And it shows the tracking. You can track various different flights. And he tracked, at the time of the explosion, a U.S. military unnamed, untitled jet. Some sort of, he names the exact type of jet it is. We just don't know which one. That was in the area at that time and flying low after it did a refueling over the area of the scene of the crime. Supposedly this kind of jet is designed to communicate with submarines. So you draw your own conclusions. More coming up.
Excuse me, is this where I get a license to start a new business?
I wouldn't be hasty. You have to get a license to go out of business, too, you know.
Oh, well, look, I've invented this little anti-gravity machine, see?
Is that why you're walking 2 inches above the floor?
Oh, yes, it's very comfortable. It saves on shoe leather.
Yeah, well, you have to fill out these forms and report to the Human Services Department of Manpower Orientation and register with the Fair Employment Practice Commission, the Wage and Hour Division of the Employment Standards Administration, the State Sales and Income Tax Division, the Internal Revenue Service, and the Social Security Administration of the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, and, of course, OSHA.
OSHA? I thought that was a little town in Wisconsin.
You'll find out. Say, floating around like that could be dangerous. Have you checked with the Consumer Product Safety Commission?
Well, not yet.
Come to think of it, you actually are flying, aren't you? Look, you need to go over to the Federal Aviation Administration and the Transportation...
It's very hard to get anything done these days if you're in business, but free enterprise built this country. Think what could happen if we don't keep it free. A public service of this station and the Center for the Defense of Free Enterprise, Bellevue, Washington.
Besides, we just can't have people floating about unregulated, you know.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here, and I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live. Phones are open in the remaining moments here. Maybe enough time for you if you want to join us. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here tonight, Ian.
Peakless Mountaineer.
And the Reverend Captain Kickass.
You can join us online anytime you want. Just go to freetalklive.com. You can enjoy the features there. I did play back a little bit of this video by MonkeyWorks, Monkey WERX US. The link is in our chat server, but I will go ahead and put that on our social media. So if you follow us on social.freetalklive.com, you will have the link to this video, and you can see it for yourself. He identifies the type of plane. It is a Navy P-8 Poseidon. It is a maritime patrol aircraft, reconnaissance aircraft, that was developed for the U.S. Navy. It operates in the anti-submarine warfare, anti-surface warfare, and intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance roles. It can drop sonobuoys, which is something that is like a sonar system, and can conduct underwater acoustic research, can operate in conjunction with other assets. Anyway, that's what they did. This was the only plane, apparently, over the Baltic Sea area where the Nord Stream 2 pipeline was at the time that it was attacked, and it went down from 20,000 feet to something like 10,000 feet, according to this guy in the video that he shows from some fancy plane tracking system. So, I mean, you know, what does this mean?
Seems to me like you caught the U.S. red-handed.
Yeah.
The buoys are back in town.
Like hand in the cookie jar.
Indeed.
Thin Lizzy, anyone? No?
And,
okay.
And just to frame this properly, we are talking about the fact that our rulers are toying with a potential extinction level event here.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. It's all a dramatic effect.
You don't think World War III? I mean, I hope you're right. I hope you're right.
I don't believe that. Like, I believe that all of these governments are kind of working together. Right, in a way that, like, yeah, they're
seemed like it during
antagonizing.
COVID.
They're antagonizing each other enough for like it to be something you pay attention in the news, something we talk about here on the radio, something that creates headlines, that kind of thing. But none of them are like, if you don't do what I say, we're going to drop nukes on you.
Well, the reality is they don't want to get nuked themselves.
Right.
So, here's my thought on the matter. I think that there are some individuals that are going to end up in these positions that are like, well, if I can't own the world, no one can. And will be willing to destroy it.
I hope you're wrong.
Total psychopaths. Let's go to the phones here. Dave in Michigan, you're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
Hey, thanks for taking the call.
Yes, sir.
Because I respectfully disagree, because
with what?
Even though some of the governments may be in bed with each other, if there's a report that just one plane, my beloved United States Navy Marine here, but if that's the only reports, who knows who's in bed with whom? Biden, Putin, Kim Jong-un, or other bad actors out there. So we don't know. I don't believe, you guys, that we don't have hard facts. And actually, I don't think our government doesn't have hard facts.
Who do you think destroyed the pipeline, Dave?
What you say, Ian, I think about what you say, that New Hampshire, the pretty cool state, but by gosh, you're surrounded by a bunch of. Do we know who they are? That's our federal government.
I'm not sure what you're saying here tonight, Dave. Are you saying you don't think the federal government would have bombed the Nord Stream 2 pipeline?
Nuclear war.
I don't think he's listening.
No, I don't think so.
Sabotage a pipeline in about 1 second. I know that.
I don't think he's listening to me either.
What are we going to blame it on? And what are the facts about a plane dropped down from 20,000 feet over to Sonobuoy? We make those in Jackson, Michigan.
Dave's not.
Anyways.
Okay. Dave, are you able to hear us?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So what is your theory then on... So it doesn't sound like you believe that the U.S. government would destroy the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. So do you have a counter story or theory that you want to present?
Well, God only knows, but my opinion is this. When I joined the military back 40 years ago, I trusted our government, our United
That was a
States
huge
government.
mistake.
Today, I don't know if I do, Ian. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Well, and you shouldn't.
I mean, I'm surprised you're still even
How do we
confused
know?
about whether or not that you should. I mean, it's pretty
Right.
clear they're not trustworthy.
Right, but if you can say there was one plane that came down from 20,000 feet to 10,000 to drop a sonobuoy.
We didn't say anything about dropping a sonobuoy.
Just
we don't know about that.
That kind of plane does drop sonobuoys,
That's
but we
what I
don't know
mean.
exactly what they were doing at the time, but it looks like they were communicating with a submarine.
Well, we don't
There
know
must be
100% what they
hundreds
were
of
doing, Dave,
aircraft
but
in
would
the
you
air.
agree that the U.S. federal government is willing to lie to get into a war and deceive?
Oh, hell yes.
Okay.
And that's what I'm concerned about.
Okay, so then you should distrust them.
Well, I don't necessarily distrust all of them.
You don't necessarily
I may not
distrust
be
a
able to
group.
beat them, but I don't know if I can beat them. But I don't know if I want to join them again right now.
You have more options than those two.
All right. Thanks for your
Thank you, David. I
Walt.
appreciate hearing from you tonight. Yeah, you definitely don't want to join these people. They have lied so many times. They've lied and to get into so many wars. And if they're willing to lie, they're willing to conduct secretive operations for sure. They don't want to come right out and show their hand, although Biden ostensibly showed their hand back in February, which was probably a tactical error on his part. Now, you could argue that some other party saw Biden make this promise and said, oh, it'll look like the Americans did it if we go bomb this thing. But who is that? Who has the interest in doing that?
Like I just recently searched submarine, Navy, Nord Stream, and the top 10 headlines say Russian warships and submarines spotted near sabotaged Nord Stream pipeline. Nord Stream pipelines. European security officials observed Russian Navy ships in the area. Not one mention of the plane, though.
Right.
At least in the headlines.
Well,
Yeah.
if Russia wanted to punish Germany with no gas, they could just turn off the gas.
Right.
And then they don't have to explode their $20 billion pipeline
I mean, like,
they paid for.
if I had to come up with another theory, China. I mean, maybe China made it look exactly like the U.S. blew up this pipeline so that they could drive even more of a wedge between the U.S. and Russia because those are the two other major power players in the world. Like, if I had to come up with an alternative theory, that would probably be it.
That's definitely a wild card kind of theory, right? Because
I mean, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably not China.
What is Occam's razor? The most likely explanation is probably the correct one?
Yeah, the simplest.
Yeah. In this case, there's some evidence that this plane was there at that time. And if it were China, they sure as hell wouldn't just be hoping a U.S. plane happens to fly along at the same time they want to blow this thing up, right?
Yeah, well, and I mean, if the U.S. didn't do it, then they're being framed because it looks like it, and they have they have everything to gain and nothing to lose from this happening.
From the aviationist.com, the depth of the Nord Stream pipeline, around 200 feet beneath the surface, is well within the reach of most underwater weapons, including mines, torpedoes, depth charges, and other subsurface weapon systems, including some air-delivered systems. Additionally, the depth is well within the capability of many small manned and unmanned submersible vehicles, and most practically, if less glamorous, a surface vessel the size of a fishing trawler could accurately deliver subsurface munitions large enough to cause damage similar to what is being reported now on the Nord Stream pipeline.
So what if this B8 whatever or P8 Poseidon actually did the attack itself? What if it dropped something down there that blew it up?
Totally plausible. Also,
Very
it could
well
have
be.
dropped some sort of a submersible thing that went down, did the thing, came back up, they picked it back up and took off.
Yeah, because you would think there would be some evidence of a U.S. submarine coming in there, right? They've got to have. If there were indeed Russian subs in that area, then they would probably be able to ping it,
right?
Don't you think? I don't know.
Yeah,
this gets beyond my level of knowledge.
Yeah, mine too. But.
And even without like having a potential murder weapon here, the motive and opportunity are there. So I already thought it was the U.S. before finding out about this thing.
Sure, me too. seemed to be, like you said, they've got the motivation, they've got the they said they were going to do it. So like what else do you need?
Like, well, our friends Germany, they shouldn't be tempted to ally with Russia, so we'll just take this away.
And of course that means they're going to have to pay even more for their electricity bills this wintertime.
Well, and Germany just simply shouldn't have made it illegal to have nuclear power. Then you'd have plenty of energy, plenty of heat, plenty of food.
Yep, it's a mess, and we're out of time for tonight. But these guys are going to be back in about a half an hour over at watch.freetalklive.com. Tune in for Beard Talk Live, the uncensored, internet-only version of this show. I think you're going to enjoy it at watch.freetalklive.com in about 30 minutes. See you tomorrow night, otherwise.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values?